Good evening. I'd like to call the City Council Committee of the Whole meeting for August 15th, 2018 to order. At this time, for a moment of silence, you know, this is the last week of summer for many of our kids as they start school next week. Be mindful again as they are running around the community in their last week before they go back to school, but more importantly, how we can all come together to help support them as they start school again. I know the schools and all of us need to provide mentoring and support to all of our young people as they not only go back to school but all times. So with that in mind and thinking about the young people and their futures in our community, let's stop for a moment of silence. Thank you very much. Alderman Condon, would you lead us in a Pledge of Allegiance? Thank you, Alderman Condon. Jackie, would you please call the roll?
Ambrose.
Here.
Condon.
Here.
Rawson.
Here.
Dickman. Here. Mattson.
Here.
Grip.
Here.
McGinnis.
Here.
Kluel.
Here.
Tompkins. Dunn.
Here.
9 present, Your Honor.
Thank you very much. And again, I want to wish you a good evening. And as we begin the meeting of our City Council, I would again like to welcome all those in attendance and all those who are viewing the meeting on television or on the internet. We respectfully welcome your comments and opinions, and please keep in mind that as you talk to the council, you're also sharing your thoughts with fellow Davenporters and with viewers throughout the region by way of our TV broadcast. We are happy that you're participating in your city government and ask that your participation reflect the common desire we all share to make Davenport an even greater place for all of our citizens. For the children, adults, seniors, and families in our community, those in attendance and those watching at home, I thank you for joining us. At this time, we ask that you turn off or silence your cell phones and other electronic handheld devices, as they can interfere with the audio system and be disruptive here in the chambers. If you wish to address the council on a specific item that appears on a committee agenda, you are encouraged to do so during that standing committee. You will also have an opportunity to address the council under public with business portion of the meeting, which is a listening portion whereby we don't discuss those topics, but we love to hear your comments, which will occur towards the end. When addressing the City Council, I ask that you step to the podium, wait to be recognized by myself or the committee chair, and speak to the council as a body and not to any single member. We will ask that you limit your remarks to no more than 5 minutes, and I ask that everyone observe, and I know you all will, the commonly accepted rules of courtesy, decorum, dignity, and good taste. So again, thank you all for being here. Is there a city administrator update this evening?
Nothing this evening, Your Honor.
Thank you very much. This evening we have 3 public hearings, 2 under community development, 1 under public works. Alderman Grip, would you please lead the discussion, the hearings on community development?
Thank you, Your Honor. We have 2 public hearings for community development this evening. I open the public hearing for item number 1 on the ordinance for case number REZ 18-10, request to rezone 24.27 acres, more or less, of property located south of East 53rd Street, immediately west of the Bettendorf city border, from R2 PUD low-density residential district planned unit development and PDD planned development district to R5M PUD medium-density dwelling district planned unit development. Jessica Tuttle, Thompson Thrift Development Company, is the petitioner. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to comment on this public hearing? Oh, sorry. The petitioner has a presentation they want to start with. Go ahead, step up and have at it.
Thank you, Alderman Grip. I want to be respectful of your time, so we do have a presentation that we used at Plan Commission and then at our neighborhood meetings.
Can you identify
Sure.
yourself? Yes, thank you.
Sure. So I'm Jessica Tuttle. I'm with Watermark. I'm the Director of Development. So we'd like to show you a brief presentation. It has a lot of information, so I'll probably skip through pretty quickly, but we're here to answer any and all questions at the appropriate time. So Watermark Residential is proposing the 304 multifamily unit project tonight. We are headquartered out of Terre Haute, Indiana, so it's 3 hours east of here. Excited to be here in Davenport We searched the entire country really for sites that fit our business model and fit our list of criteria. That criteria is close to major retail. This site specifically fits that with the 53rd Street existing retail and then the proposed retail along the northern frontage. We're also close to I-74, so we like to be close to major thoroughfares, good school systems. It really checks all of our boxes. Watermark started in 2008, and since 2010, that was our first closing, we've built 35 projects. So here's where we've built mostly in the Midwest. We're based out of the Midwest. We've also done a lot in Texas and Denver. Tonight we're proposing a 2-story multifamily project. We think it'll really complement the single family next door. So based on our neighborhood meeting, this is our standard 2-story product that we've used in the past. Based on discussions with the neighbors, we've customized, working with our architect, our 2-story building to actually make them larger. So now they're 16-unit buildings with 10 garages underneath. Those buildings allow us to pull our site inward. So now that they're larger buildings, the buildings are further off the property lines. So it really helped to add a very large landscape setback for the neighbors. Here's the exciting part. So this is actually recent. I'm really excited for what our architects came up with. This is our clubhouse. We'll show pictures of what we're trying to get here. It's hard to see in these elevations sometimes, but our pool will be tucked back behind these buildings, high-end fitness, high-end club lounge, outdoor dining and bar areas. So it's a very nice luxury apartment community. Here's elevations of our 2-story product. So we're using white fiber cement with dark windows, cantilevered balconies, so it's a very clean, modern look. Short end of our buildings, this will be what you see as you drive through our community, and I'll show you that site plan here in just a minute. These are the attached garages. So these do very well with young professionals and the resident that we're looking for and we think are here in Davenport. It is really like a single family home where you drive into your garage, you walk into your unit, and there's no shared corridor. So even if you're on the second floor, you would drive into your garage, walk up your stairs, and into your unit. So here are the images. This is what I'm really excited about. I would love to live in a house that looked like this. If anyone watches HGTV, this is what the 2018 dream home looks like. So this is the look and feel that we're going for. I think it'll really attract more people to Davenport and really be a very nice project. Here's pictures quickly of what we've built in the past. So as I mentioned, we've built 35 projects. All of these you can go and visit. You can look at our website and tour these sites. So 2-story, it does look like a single family residence. And we've built a lot of these near single family developments. All have their own private door and private balcony. Example site plan. This was just to show the amount of green space and the amenity layout that we do in our communities. We do 3- and 4-story product. We're not proposing that tonight. We don't think it'll be a good fit, but we wanted to show you the resort style amenities that we're proposing. Interior finishes. So all of our comps here in the market are 10 years or older. So when you look at what we're proposing, it's a very high-end granite countertops or quartz countertops, stainless steel appliances, in-unit washer and dryer. These are actually, this was built and designed 3 years ago, so now we do framed mirrors and even higher quality than what you see here. Open floor plans. And then community features. Our clubhouse will have kitchen, lounge area, game room, fitness. We do fire pits. We've started to do green eggs for anyone that likes to smoke meat. And then fire pits with nice lighting. It really gives it more of a resort type of feel. Dog park is popular in our communities as well, and we'll propose one here. So then there was a list of questions that came up with the neighbors that we went through with the neighborhood meetings and then at Plan Commission. We're happy to answer any additional questions. But I wanted to show you, this is our site plan. So we're proposing 19 buildings total. The custom building that we're doing here is what's allowed us to give us over 100-foot setbacks on both sides to buffer us between our buildings and the neighbors. And then there'll be dry retention basins as well. Dog park is located in the middle of the site, and then those amenities are tucked in behind our clubhouse. Access is provided up on 53rd Street, so we'll be installing a new traffic light as well as turn lanes on 53rd Street. And then the traffic study did not warrant turn lanes at our eastern entrance, but the city has asked that we would build and install those turn lanes, and we do plan to do that. The retail out front, it's about 12 acres, so we will have shared access drives to get back to our community. Zoomed in version. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Right now is just the public hearing, so we won't answer questions. Later on in the community development section, we might have questions for you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else from the public who wishes to comment on this public hearing? Step forward, state your name and address or ward, please.
My name is Mary Clifford. I live at 4530 East 49th Court here in Davenport. My husband submitted a written appeal exhibit, or letter and appeal, and to the city planning, city council members, and the mayor by email on this Saturday, August 3rd, because he's traveling out of town on business and couldn't be here. So I would like to read the letter to the board, if that ends. Okay. Regarding case number REZ 1810. It has been well documented during previous public meetings and hearings that the subject property went through a lengthy and thorough zoning debate in 2011 to establish the current R2 PUD zoning. This land is bordered on 3 sides with well-kept single-family residences that have been contributing to the school, city, and county tax funds for over 20 years. In 2011, the city of Davenport concurred that this subject property should also be developed with low-density housing. As an adjoining property owner, we are concerned as to how this change in zoning will impact our quality of life and the value of our property. The requester for the zoning change has made appearances at 2 public meetings and 2 public hearings to introduce and explain their development proposal and target market. Assurances how well the premises will be maintained. The presentations were very heavily focused on the amenities of their properties and how they manage the properties. Ms. Tuttle and Watermark have been less than fully transparent during these meetings. In one meeting, they were asked if they had sold any of their developments. The reply was, quote, some, unquote. A summary of Watermark developments is contained in Exhibit 1, which is a chart that we've turned in, and I have copies if you would like to see them, which clearly shows a pattern of acquire, develop, and divest. Watermark has not demonstrated a long-term commitment to the communities in which they develop or to the neighboring residents. Management of the property is only short-term until the property can be divested, I should say. The current zoning of R2 PUD provides consistent neighborhood structure, better options for the traffic flow within the area, and less risk of property value loss to the current residences. At the first public meeting, Councilman Kluhl was asked several questions on his personal view of the development request. One direct question asked was, quote, what would you do if you lived here, unquote. His response was, quote, "Move," unquote. We each have the option of choosing where we live, but a family that has relocated multiple times as a family, we know the mental, the physical, and the financial investment in selecting and establishing a new home. The question before the council is, quote, "What is the need and justification to change the zoning on this parcel?" Unquote. Does the promise of increased future tax revenue justify breaking government's promise to the current citizens? We plead with you to reject this request for change of zoning. With regards, Jimmy Clifford and Mary Clifford. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there anyone else from the public who wishes to comment on this public hearing? Seeing no one, I move to close the public hearing. There's a motion and a second. All in. Oh. Okay. State your name, address, or ward, please.
My name is Lori Hughes, and I live at 5143 Hamilton Court. I have been to all of these meetings in the past and have spoke several times representing our neighbors tonight, who are 3 of the 4 of my neighbors out of town. So I'm speaking for them. We all oppose this. We have lived in our neighborhood 15 years. We are a community that Davenport should be proud of. We know each other. We know each other's families. We go to each other's children's weddings and baptisms and all of the things that make a neighborhood a great neighborhood. And we are very, very concerned that if you put 300 apartment units in our backyard, literally in our backyard, that is going to be destroyed. Our taxes continue to go up, and I'm pretty certain our property values will plunge if we have this huge set of apartment buildings in the backyard. And from what Ms. Clifford just said, over time, they do not keep them, they sell them to whoever, then what's going to happen? And that makes it even more of a concern for all of us on Hamilton Court. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. State your name, address, or ward, please.
W.T. Gramp, Ward 6. I own a property at 4750 East 49th Avenue. Been a realtor in this town 30-plus years, and I think these ladies did a great job of explaining the overall concept. But what bugged me was the bait-and-switch concept, that the property was meticulously rezoned, agreed to by everybody 7 years ago. So there's people in this room that made real estate decisions based on that. So to come back 7 years later and say, well, guess what? It's not R2 anymore. It's not single family homes. It's not going to be condos. It's going to be 300 apartment buildings. I think that's a huge injustice. And I think that makes the city look bad, makes the realtors look bad who explain to their clients that, no, that open field is going to be single family or condos. If they would have mentioned it was 300 apartments, I can tell you they would have made a hell of a different decision. So that's the point that I like. And I'm glad they brought up the point, too, about I did some research on large developers like these folks, and I'm sure they're nice people, but their business strategy is simple. Build it, lease it, sell it. That's what they do. And they did it 35 times. And I'm sure it's very profitable, so the city gets stuck with it. Who owns it next? Who knows? It could be a hedge fund. It could be a Wall Street firm. You know, it's a stock that's tradable, that is nothing more than a money machine. And we have to be stuck with the results of it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else from the public who wishes to comment on this public hearing? Name and address or ward, please.
My name is Michael Ryan, 6th Ward, 4646 East 49th Court. I've gotten up and spoken a lot, kind of got chastised last time for speaking a little bit too long, so I'll just make it very quick. Number one, I agree with WT that these seem like very, very nice people, and this is a great looking development. It's just I think that this is not appropriate for this particular location. Going back to right after the sales division was completed, shortly afterwards, the property owner threatened the residents with she was going to sell it out to big box retail, and the residents in the neighborhood fought against it at that time. And then just about 10 years later, she came back and tried to use this kind of a loophole using the 200-foot notification and protest zone to create a exactly 200-foot border completely around the property, so that she could propose heavy commercial in the middle of it, and then it would just be bordered by a 200-foot zone that we could protest the residential that she was proposing, but we weren't allowed because she was using this loophole to protest the actual commercial that we really didn't like. Like WT said, we kind of went through a lot of discussions on this in order to kind of come down to this compromise where we're like, okay, this we can compromise here. We can say light residential here, and then in the middle, yeah, sure, let's do some light commercial. We understand that needs to be developed. That was an agreement. That was a promise that the city council, the owner, and the neighborhood, we agreed to that condition. My concern here is that in the intervening time, people have kind of said, well, what's changed since then? Well, one thing that doesn't really seem to have changed is that the owner does not seem to have been trying to sell the property in good faith. My understanding from talking to people in the real estate business is that she has had, this entire time, has had an extremely high price on this land, which doesn't warrant the development that she had previously agreed to. So I just kind of feel a little bit used a little bit in that the stuff that we went through 7 years ago was all for naught. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else from the public who wishes to comment on this public hearing? Name and address or ward, please.
Scott Hughes, 5129 Hamilton Court. I can't say any more than what they've already said. I'm opposed to it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else who wishes to comment on this public hearing? Name and address or ward, please.
Richard Drucker, 3017 Grove, 4th Ward. And I don't want to say we don't want this development, but do we have to put it there? Davenport is a big city. We got Veterans Boulevard, a lot of cornfields there yet. We got West Locust Street, right off of 280. I know it's not quite what they want as far as retail, but as a field of dreams, if you build it, they will come. Let's start looking at the West Davenport. We got sewer system on Telegraph Road, 27-inch pipe that is 3 miles away from Interstate 280 and Locust Street. Let's start looking at developing the rest of our city and build it up. If these families move there, what school district will they go to? Davenport School District is short on students and need them. If we put something in the West End or elsewhere in Davenport, we will also boost our school system, which is very important to ours. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else who wishes to comment on this public hearing? There's already a motion and a second to close the public hearing. Can that stand? That stands. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. This public hearing has been closed. The second public hearing is for the ordinance for case number REZ 18-11, request to rezone 13.65 acres more or less of property located south of East 53rd Street, west of the Bettendorf city border from R2 PUD and PDD to all PDD with a new land use plan. Kevin Kellner, Build to Suit, Inc. is the petitioner.
Hello, everyone. Kevin Kellner with Build to Suit. I'll keep this brief.
The commercial acreage that we're looking to rezone will be much in keeping with what's happened along the 53rd and Utica corridor. So we would be looking at a mixture of retail, restaurant, financial institutions, those kinds of developments that you're used to seeing, again, up and down that corridor. We've had interest expressed since we've received a little bit of publicity about the rezoning, but we don't have any deals signed, and which would be typical of a project that's at this point. So that's what you'll see. Most of the lots will be subdivided to be in the acre to acre and a half range, and we're sharing detention with the Watermark folks to make that more economical for everyone. So I'd be glad to answer any questions if I could.
We'll do that at the community development portion. Thank you. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to comment on this item? State your name and address or ward, please.
I'm Lori Hughes again. I live at 5143 Hamilton Court, and I expressed my concerns earlier on behalf of my neighbors, but this proposal directly affects us, as we will have commercial buildings on the other side of our fence. We knew going into this years ago that the front part of this property would be commercial. We're not arguing that. Our argument is that how far it goes back and the uncertainty of what it's going to look like, because there's no guarantees about lighting or setbacks or berms or greenery or anything. We don't have any details from the developer on that, and that's very concerning to us and the people directly next to us, because they'll be affected by it as well. So I don't know, based on their kind of proposal and that kind of development with commercial, if there's any kind of specifics that need to be worked out before it's approved, but we would like to be part of that and have our property respected with respect to that development. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there anyone else from the public who wishes to comment on this public hearing? Seeing no one, I move to close the public hearing.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. This public hearing has been closed, and that concludes the public hearings for community development, Your Honor.
Thank you very much. Again, just for those who may be new to the process, public hearing opens up the discussion. These items will again appear on the committee agendas later on in the meeting as well, and be talked about in a little more detail. Our alderman will get involved in the discussion, and other people can discuss it as well. Our second area of discussion for public hearing will be Public Works, and Alderman Ambrose will lead that public hearing.
Thank you, Your Honor. I open a public hearing on the plans, specifications, form of contract, and estimated cost for the Sterilite Spur Railroad Track Expansion and Interchange Construction Project. Anybody from the public wishing to address that, please come forward. Hearing and seeing no one, Your Honor, I move to close this public hearing.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Thank you very much. That
Thank you,
public
Honor.
hearing is closed. We'll move on. There are no presentations this evening for tonight's meeting, but under petitions and communication, is there anyone has anything they want to report? Alderman Dickman.
Thank you, Your Honor. I wanted to thank the officers that came to my ward meeting this past Thursday. They did a very informative presentation about protective steps that they are taking to prevent crime, and then also protective steps that the community members can take to make themselves less likely to be victims of crime. And if you weren't able to make it, but you are still curious about it, one really good way to get in touch with our officers is every second Tuesday of the month at 7 p.m. over in our police community room. We have it's called Weed and Seed meetings, where officers will come and talk about different things happening in the community. So I definitely encourage everyone to go check that out and find out what's going on in our community and what we're doing to address some of the crime we're dealing with. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other discussion items? The only thing I would, oh, there it is. Alderman Rawson. Thank you.
Sorry, my button went off. Yeah, I just wanted to let everyone know there were some concerns from residents regarding Save-A-Lot on Locust Street. and that they have not been able to take EBT cards. I did speak with the owner this morning. It was recently purchased within the last 5 business days, and that paperwork has closed. And the new owner has submitted all the appropriate paperwork to the state, so he's anticipating being up and running really soon. So if anyone had concerns about that, we are not losing a grocery store on Locust. It just changed hands, and he's waiting for the state approvals to come through, so everything will kind of go back to the way it was, except for the name change. It will no longer be Save-A-Lot. It will be called Save More. So just wanted to update everyone on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Rawson. The only other thing I would share is that, we've been in the midst of a community action summit and getting feedback from the community. I think we've spoken to over 500 individuals, all different situations, kids and adults and families and so forth, and providers. On August 28th in the evening, we will be having a reporting out session of all that we've heard, and then bring a group of people, of providers and professionals led by the Center for Juvenile Justice Planning on the 29th and 30th to kind of come up with some recommendations, which we'll also share with the community. So we'll keep you informed with that. The public is invited to the session on the 28th to listen to all the findings or what we've heard, and then we will keep you informed of the process. So that's all we have there. I see no other comments by any of my colleagues. Now our action items for discussion. You'll notice as we go through these items on the agenda, some will be a first, second, or third consideration. This is committee of the whole, so there is a first reading tonight. If it's the first consideration, then next week that consideration will be voted on. That happens 3 times, so over a 6-week period, these decisions are made. So some are on the first, some are on second, and some are on third considerations. So you'll see that as we go through our agenda. So our first area for discussion will be, again, community development. Alderman Grip will lead that discussion, and Alderman Kuhl will set the agenda.
Thank you, Your Honor. We have a robust community development agenda tonight with 10 items. Item number 1 is a third consideration ordinance for case number REZ 18-08, being the request of William Torsha on behalf of WCT Investments Davenport Series LLC for a rezoning on 6.5 acres, more or less, located along the south of East 53rd Street and east of Lorton Avenue from R1 Low Density Dwelling District to PDD Planned Development District to facilitate commercial development. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to comment on this item? State your name and address or ward, please.
Good evening, Mayor, Davenport City Council. My name is Michael Malloy. I'm a Bettendorf attorney representing more than a dozen residents and citizens of Davenport living on Lorton Avenue and Fairhaven Road that are going to be directly affected by this particular rezoning. Now, we've already submitted a petition to you folks with over 50 names of citizens who are opposing this particular rezoning. One of the goals of the Davenport City Council that you strive to meet is to protect neighborhoods. And I've heard many of you aldermen echo that statement and premise in the last 4 weeks of the meetings that we've attended before you. Now, when we started this process approximately 4 weeks ago, we came before you opposed to this particular rezoning with the request that if you were going to approve it, we wanted 5 conditions added to that rezoning. Plan and Zone Commission on a split 4-3 vote narrowly approved this or recommended approval of this rezoning to the City Council. They already attached 10 conditions to the rezoning. We were asking the City Council to move to amend the petition, the ordinance rezoning petition, to add these 5 conditions. Since that time, we have narrowed down these to 2 conditions. We have dropped 3 of the conditions that we originally started with, and that was part of the process that we went through on this rezoning as far as getting to where we're at now. Now you are on 3rd reading of this ordinance. Next week you'll vote on it, and we're here to tell you that you need to add the 2 conditions that were provided to you at the last council meeting regarding number one, the re-blacktopping of Lorton Avenue from 53rd Street to 46th Street, and number two, making Lorton Avenue a cul-de-sac at the intersection of 53rd and 46th. These conditions need to be considered in tandem with the rezoning because they're part and parcel of the rezoning. We don't believe that these conditions should be delayed for 12 months or more, but if you're going to propose and pass this rezoning now, you need to put those conditions on the rezoning to protect the neighborhood. The neighborhood needs some protection here because you're going from residentially zoned property up to commercial. You're making a big change here from what the existing rezoning is. And with these two conditions, the neighborhood would be content to accept this rezoning. However, if the conditions are not added, the neighborhood is not going to withdraw their opposition to this particular rezoning. So I ask you folks to think tonight about next week and about adding these two conditions to protect the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public wish to comment on this item? State your name and address or ward.
I'm Charlotte McManus, 4728 Lorton Avenue. I reside with my husband since 1972, which is 46 years at our property. And I've said before, we have almost 3 acres, and it's a beautiful, beautiful place. I don't want it to lose its value, even though I'm a senior citizen. We plan to have our children, one of them, take it and put in pools, tennis courts, whatever they want, because we have so much land. But my main thing, why I'm so worried, I'm, of course, worried about the safety of our whole neighborhood. And I speak for the people on 51st, Fairhaven, and all of them. We all don't want the same thing. It's very evident on some of that. But let me tell you what's happening right now on Lorton. With the lane closure on 53rd, and I'm sure you've been through it, I shop a lot and I'm coming from the east at various times of the day. It gets very slow. There's one lane, and I'm coming to Lorton. Finally, the green closes, the green light's gone. The red light comes on with an arrow, and people are making a mad dash to get off of 53rd. 53rd is a nightmare, and what is happening? Lorton is a nightmare. We sit on our decks and we watch the trucks, pickups come down, speeding, just unbelievably so bad. The crime, just 2 nights ago, we had a car stolen on Lorton. Then the next night, a car bashed in all the windows. So there are people coming in. It's going to get much worse, and I'm worried. We've been very fortunate to have a young man, Jeff Talbert, and I'm sure you've gotten some of his emails. He was very instrumental with Rich Kluel, and a 6th Ward alderman, in the neighborhood meeting. And he said he's young and he's smart and he's stable and he's not quite as emotional as probably I am. But he has some wonderful ideas. And you know, I got so upset with our alderman when he said last meeting that it was time that he would suggest that we put this on hold for an entire year. And I said, you know, if you put that on hold for a year, it's not going to work for me at least, and I will oppose it, and our attorney will oppose it, and we'll go from there. But I'm not opposed to the development on the 53rd Street corridor or anything that goes in there. But if it goes in, and when it goes in, you have some responsibility to get us some safety and some things implemented for these causes. Now, I really am so impressed with Jeff and all the work he's done with my husband and our attorney and everybody. He's gone door to door. He's explained to people what's going on, and they know, but you know, they didn't all go to the meeting, and a lot of the people that came to your meeting, Rich, were not even from our ward. I really don't have much more to say. you know where I stand on this, and you know how I feel and how I feel about you and your responsibility. So thank you for your time. And Jeff, would you please?
Good evening. I'm Jeff Talbert. I almost list my address as Lorton, but actually I'm on Fairhaven Court, 4822. I got involved with this because basically I'm looking at the neighborhood and something that I've kind of grown to love in the last 5 years as a resident in this area. And so I put together a letter I'd like to go through. Now, as the Portillo's development debate reaches its final days, I call upon each member of the Davenport City Council to protect the residents through thoughtful, diligent, and forward-thinking action. There are a number of traffic and safety concerns that remain unresolved. The community is crying out for help, but the council remains, for the most part, silent. Residents throughout the Lorton Avenue neighborhood have diligently and repeatedly voiced concerns about safety, road conditions, pedestrian traffic, and community impact as Portillo's commercial rezoning and construction proposal nears its final vote. The neighborhood citizens have attended planning and zoning meetings. Some residents secured legal counsel as representation, and we submitted a petition for review and action. Next, we attended and/or spoke at city council meetings. We attended Alderman Kluhl's neighborhood meeting with standing room only attendance, and we continue to voice concerns. A large part of me believes that this council has already agreed to the Portillo's development without regard to the impact on the community. The meeting on July 25th included multiple concerns, which again addressed concerns about traffic safety, road conditions, and neighborhood preservation. These valid and repeated concerns, additional requests for consideration, and emotional pleas continue to be the forefront at meetings, and they come from a clearly motivated and concerned group. The first official response from the City Council came immediately following these community concerns on that meeting. It was received loud and clear, and it came with a disrespect that can only be described as a punch to the stomach. Revenue estimates. How much money per year, X, Y, and Z reasons favoring the development and the only proposed location. Increased property values around new development, which basically means my property taxes are going to go up. The same citizens that are voicing discontent and concern. Finally, I quote verbatim, "But just making sure we are all on the same page what we are deciding about." Luckily, that was not the only response, and to be fair, many council members acknowledged the community and many concerns presented. Here's what I would like you to remember as the process continues. Every ward has great neighborhoods. Every ward has them. You know we want to protect all of our neighborhoods. We will keep the dialogue open, and protecting your neighborhood is extremely important to the City Council and the Mayor. Let's try to work together and find a compromise where everybody is happy and everybody is protected. Lorton residents are not asking for curbs, gutters, or sidewalks. Not all of us. We don't want taxpayers to spend $1.3 million on a new road. We're asking for specific protection and road resurfacing so the little country community can survive alongside the hottest commercial corridor in the Quad City area. I also followed that up later on that night with a proposal letter that I put together. I'm looking for a win-win, and I'm looking for safety, and I'm looking for low cost, and I'm looking for action. Although the Lorton neighborhood residents and Alderman Kluhl discussed issues and concerns during a recent community meeting, we did not reach a consensus, perhaps due to the format or the lack of options presented for us to vote on. We had two. Option one, do you want a cul-de-sac? Yes. Option two, do you want a cul-de-sac? No. I respectfully request that each city council member consider the outcry from the neighborhood as justification that the vote was not a statement of indecisiveness, and that the limited options presented failed to capture the passion and urgency felt in that standing room only meeting. Several people were unable to make input or voice opinions for consideration. The final numbers for or against a cul-de-sac may be split, but here's what cannot be ignored. 46 petitions, or 46 plus signatures favor a cul-de-sac allowing emergency vehicle access. The neighborhood meeting had a huge number of concerned citizens in attendance. The yes votes for a cul-de-sac and the neighborhood meeting, the number of residents that contributed to legal fees or further representation. Moving forward, I call for the City Council to reject the suggestion that the traffic study issues be tabled for a year, and that you instead immediately approve and implement the following action plan that accomplishes three things. Immediate results, low cost with high impact, easily implemented, easily modified, and again, focused on safety in the community. I could go on and read the rest of this, but I think I'll end for sake of time. I would really like to know a couple different things. We talked about the cul-de-sac option. There was a lot of comments afterwards.
Sir, can you please?
I'm
wrap
wrapping
your
it up.
Thank you.
I'd like to know what number of responses you would like in favor of this proposal, which you all have in your email, before you would consider it. Thank you for your time.
State your name and address or ward, please.
Tricia Bruner, 4840 Fairhaven Court. So last week we were kind of trying to figure out what are the remaining questions that are unanswered, what still needs to be answered. And I have one. Maybe I've asked it multiple times. Maybe it seems to be rhetorical. It's not rhetorical to me. It's very important. Why does the development on Utica Ridge, north of the Hy-Vee there, why do they get a step-down approach, but our neighborhood doesn't? I want an answer to that. It's not rhetorical. Why do the neighborhoods that were discussed earlier tonight get step-down approaches, and we don't? Just because we happen to live on a busy road, that negates our ability or our desire to have a step-down approach as well. So 4 busy restaurants is what we get in our backyard, while others get a step-down zoning approach with either office buildings or something in between. Believe me, if you came to me and said, hey, we'll put a hair salon in and they'll be open decent hours, they won't have drive-thrus, I'd be a lot happier. Why don't we get that type of consideration? Why don't we matter? Are our houses not as expensive? Is our land not as valuable? What's the difference? You guys know I'm concerned about water. What I'm frustrated with is you're missing the point. You told me to go look at St. Ambrose. I am a person that has tried very hard not to come here and talk on emotion. I listen to what you guys say, and I take action. I went and looked at your example. And you know what? I could hear running water. I followed that water, that noise, into the neighborhood. What you get when you respond to me, what you don't get, is I don't care if Portillo's parking lot floods. I don't care. I care about our community and our residents. I care about the people that have to live next to these developments. So when you tell me St. Ambrose is fixed and I went to college there and their parking lot's fine now, you know what? That's great. They're a business with deep pockets. They can afford to fix water problems. Our residents need you guys. We need your help. So here's the next question that is not rhetorical. In the water?
Drive 20 blocks to go all the way around
to 53rd and Jersey, or I have to drive 28 blocks to go around the Elmore route and get up to 53rd and Elmore, which to me seems like a huge waste of time and resources. There's only one other issue I want to talk about, although there's several you could talk about on this one issue, but the only other one is I want to see is the safety issue. Now, we have a very fine fire station, number 8, right across the street from the Hanlon addition. Very handy for us. Now we haven't had a severe winter here for a number of years, but in 55 years I can remember a lot of severe winters. And if you have a situation, say a medical or a fire situation, and you have a snowstorm, a blinding snowstorm with poor visibility, slippery roads, traffic crawling, winds, drifting of snow, because in those hills you can get a lot of drifting. And you get those situations, and maybe even worse, maybe you have an ice storm, which can happen. And all of a sudden, that 4-minute response time that they came up with goes right out the window, because those 4 minutes, those times were taken in July. Now, under the conditions I just described, that could very easily go to 6 minutes or 8 minutes to respond to a situation like that, where the fire trucks have to go all the way around and back in. So, this is just food for thought, things to consider, because December, January, February, and March are a whole different ballgame than the summer months that we're enjoying right now. So, thank you all.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else from the public who wishes to comment on this item? State your name and address or ward, please.
Candy Pasternak. I live in the 6th Ward. I'm here on behalf of WCT Properties, the developer of this project, and would simply direct the council's attention back to the reason why we're here, which is the planning and zoning recommendation for the approval of the ordinance before you regarding the rezoning of this property. And I would just like to briefly address what we're talking about in terms of rezoning this property. And in this situation, it's established that when you've got a changing community, and the recognition by P&Z as well as this council in other circumstances, that 53rd has now become a commercial corridor. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. That's what it is. And the rezoning that we are seeking and that planning and zoning has recommended is consistent with that commercial corridor concept for 53rd Street. Some of the other items that have progressed in the development of the area that support the planning and zoning's recommendation and our request for the rezoning include the I-74 East 53rd Street interchange, which has been substantially improved and expanded to permit better access. The fact that Costco is going in across the street, and so there's going to be a widening of East 53rd to accommodate the traffic concerns that have been raised, and the commercial development that continues on East 53rd. Based on those developments and the understanding that change does occur, changing land use conditions and needs are especially emphasized as a reason to validate a zoning amendment, and that's what we're talking about here this evening. With respect to our particular request and the recommendation of planning and zoning, we believe that commercial corridor PDD is best suited for the property in question. Thank you.
State your name and address or ward, please.
Devin Birch with Austin Engineering, land development engineer consultant for the project on behalf of WCT Investments. Our office address is Emerson Place here in Davenport. So during the last meeting, I think a few members still expressed a desire to learn just a little bit more about the type of stormwater control system that we're using. In speaking with the developers, we felt that maybe the best thing to do was to just show a quick video that's available. If I could, real quick, it's queued up here. It's three minutes.
As long as you stand to your 5 minutes.
5? Yeah. Okay, so we'll get going.
A storm is coming. Are you ready? Properly manage stormwater with the chamber system from StormTech, a division of ADS. Making the best use of land is a critical step when planning site development. Equally important is to address stormwater mitigation. With StormTech, both of these priorities go hand in hand with a functional, efficient, and environmentally safe system that is easy to maintain. Thus, the system saves valuable land and protects water resources. Instead of wasting usable land for retention or detention ponds, the StormTech chamber system maximizes the available site footprint. It is designed primarily to be used under parking lots, roadways, and heavy earthloads for both private and public applications of stormwater management. The subsurface sustainable chamber system uses the Earth's natural percolation process or provides storage volume to be released downstream based on the application. The chambers nest together efficiently to lower shipping costs, thus requiring fewer trucks to lower the carbon footprint. Palletized chambers limit the on-site storage area needed. Here's a typical parking lot, but underneath, an intricate system of StormTech chambers, aggregate, fabrics, and the StormTech isolator row work together to collect rainwater, separate sediment material, and allow clean water to percolate into the ground or to be released slowly downstream, just like Mother Nature intended. Here's how the StormTech system works. When it rains, water starts to enter the system through an open catch basin. Stormwater is diverted to the isolator row, taking first flush sediment with it. As stormwater rises in the patented isolator row, it passes through the filter fabric. The open bottom chambers allow rainwater in the chamber area to flow both vertically and horizontally out of the chambers. Sediments are captured in the isolator row, protecting the storage areas of the adjacent aggregate and chambers from sediment accumulation, thus preserving void space and infiltration performance. As the rain intensifies, water crests the weir in the isolator row basin, enters the header pipe, and flows to the other chamber rows. If the system is designed as a retention system, the water infiltrates into the ground. If the system is designed as a detention or attenuation system, the water exits the system through an outlet basin using a flow control device. If groundwater infiltration is not desired, an optional impervious liner can be used under the chamber system to prevent infiltration. Maintenance or cleaning of the system is performed with a jet vac process. The jet head and hose enter the isolator row, and all the trash and sediment is jetted back to the basin, where it is vacuumed out of the basin by the vac truck hose. StormTech has thousands of chamber systems in service throughout the world. StormTech offers a variety of chamber sizes that allow for site-specific design flexibility. The larger the chamber size, the smaller the footprint, which lowers cost and provides more usable land. All StormTech chambers are designed to meet the most stringent industry performance standards for superior structural integrity. Visit our website to learn more about the StormTech chamber system.
All right, so just to add on top of that a little bit, this system is without a doubt cutting edge technology. It's science at work, it's engineering at work, it's proven technology. It's about as green as you can get without planting flowers. And the bioswales don't last near as long or are not as easy to maintain as what this system is, or near as effective. So, we've been compared to other systems in town. That system Okay, I'll close up. Anyway, I hope this was informative for you, and this is a very expensive system. It's not a cheap system at all. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else from the public who wishes to comment on this item? State your name and address or ward, please.
Hello, Brandy Ottersonhurst, 4834 Fairhaven Court, 6th Ward, obviously. I still feel like I have a lot of unanswered questions from these previous meetings. First, the issue with Lorton being cut off. It's been decided to revisit this in a year, which I do support, but it just keeps getting brought up, and that it would be a good idea to have this. And it's also being called a cul-de-sac. It's going to be a dead end, not a cul-de-sac. There's no room for a cul-de-sac, I don't believe, unless the city buys a home there, which I don't see happening, or it cuts into this proposed development. Which also brings me to the issue with the school bus again. It's still unclear where the bus is going to drop off. If Lorton does stay open, the bus could be moved to 51st and Lorton. And at that location, someone needs to tell me where my kids are going to stand waiting for the bus in a foot of snow. There's no sidewalks there. We're looking at increased traffic too. By vacating Fairhaven, you've not only compromised the bus drop-off location and increased traffic to Lorton, because when you close one street, I feel like you're just causing problems for another street. And in this case, it's Lorton. You close off Lorton, then you're causing problems for 47th. And it just keeps going. I would just like to see proper consideration of leaving Fairhaven open, because without Fairhaven staying open, the safety of my kids and everyone who lives in our cul-de-sac down there on Fairhaven, it's being compromised. The most logical way I feel of fixing this issue is to have the bus come down to the cul-de-sac, which is possible. I've seen substitute bus drivers who weren't supposed to be down there do it. I've watched 18-wheelers come down there and do it. Moving vans come down there and do it when we have people move in and out of the neighborhood. It can be done. Or another option, the bus does a 3-point turnaround on Fairhaven. I don't know too many bus drivers that want to make that part of their daily routine. If Lorton does close, we're looking at a 3-point turnaround possibly on Lorton there. And I challenge any bus driver, especially a sub, to do this on a nice snowy day with a foot of snow on the ground. I'd like to be there for that. Or, you can move it to the worst location, which is 51st and Lorton. That's where all the traffic will be coming. And there's no sidewalks there. There's nowhere to stand for the kids. So tell me where they're going to stand when they're waiting on the bus, and tell me where they're going to be walking when they're coming home, because it has to be in the road. There's no sidewalks. And if it's raining or the road is so small and there's snow or even enough water, they're walking in the road. Moving on to another unanswered question, the homes next to us on 53rd, on Fredericks and Woodland, I believe. We keep hearing how our area between Lorton and Fairhaven is ideal for business and deserves to see development. How are we any different than those homes? Are there plans to rezone this area too? And it's only like 100 yards away, so I just don't see the difference between us and them. I mean, if the argument is that those homes face 53rd, not all of the homes that are on contract, all 9 of them, I believe, not all of those face Fairhaven or face 53rd. And also, have you considered what this is going to do to those poor neighbors trying to get in and out of their homes and driveways? There's no light there. And the fire department, I watch them honk at cars to move when they're stuck on 53rd Street near Chick-fil-A. Honk, honk, trying to get cars to move. There's nowhere for them to go. This has to add time to their calls if they go in either direction of 53rd. I mean, I know that they can adjust. They'll say they adjust, but 30 seconds even, that's a matter of life and death. I would like to see some firefighters come up here and talk firsthand about the challenges they face already on 53rd Street. And lastly, the design plan or the hours for these other businesses that we're looking at. Are we looking at 24 hours of noise? We keep hearing about Portillo's, but I don't know about these other businesses. Are we looking at the noise through the drive-through? the location of the dumpsters there. We talked about the trash, or I did, I should say. I understand the developer is working to make this visually appealing as possible, but again, clear cutting dozens of those mature trees and putting up a 6-foot fence doesn't seem more appealing to me, or a better option of keeping out the noise. Again, what happened to preserving what we have? Thank you.
State your name and address or ward, please.
Good evening. My name is Peg Nielsen, and I live at 4838 Lorton. I spoke to you all last week about my concerns about this overall situation that we're looking at, and the lady that is speaking on behalf of the developer is right. We are here about rezoning, and I want to again focus on my thoughts about the proper type of rezoning for this type of development. I believe that this development is being proposed to be put in the wrong place. Having an approach where we have something that's less imposing on our neighborhood. If 53rd needs to be developed, that's fine, but why are we being subjected to having no kind of buffer zone other than the retaining wall and the beautiful landscaping that they're proposing? It's the type of business that is my concern. And I, like Patricia, believe that we deserve a step-down approach like many of these other neighborhoods are granted. So it's my ask of you to seriously consider that this type of rezoning is improper to go right up to our residential area. Thank you for your time.
Is there anyone else from the public who wishes to comment on this item? All right, seeing no one, we'll open it up for discussion. Alderwoman Dickman.
Thank you. One of the things that had been mentioned by a couple different people is the safety concern, and that is definitely a concern that I share. I wasn't sure if we've installed any of the speed indicators that have been purchased for some other areas. Yes? Okay. So I'd like to see data, if we have data from before, ideally, and if that's been working. Otherwise, I know it was 2 years of me going back and forth with the traffic engineer to get the speed indicators, and I did promise that I would continue pestering if that didn't work, so I will do that if I need to. If someone, either from staff or the development, can talk about, I know that there's not a zoning buffer zone, but were some of the conditions put in place to create a bit of a buffer zone, or the landscape layout by next week if we don't have that now? Matt? No? All right, we'll set that. Oh, Bruce is coming.
Bruce Berger, your Community Planning and Economic Development Director. I think I heard the question.
That we don't have a specific step down with zoning, but I thought that there had been some conditions with the P&Z recommendation that would create some of that effect, or?
Correct, yeah. There are some buffers that are built into the zoning, and those have been set up. I think some of them are in conditions and some of them are just built into our code, so.
Okay, so maybe before we take the official vote next week, it would be good to have a better understanding of how effective those are and what the proposals are. And then last question is if the staff could reach out to the school district and find out what their plan is if we do vacate Fairhaven, where they will be sending the bus for kids, because that is another safety concern. We don't want to have any issues with that. So that's all that I have for now. Thank you.
Alderman Mattson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think developer, I asked a question the last 2 times about your consideration for helping with the road. Would you be kind enough to talk to that a little bit? To see your thoughts? Because there's a concern about we're giving you this, so
Right.
would you help with the other one?
William Torsha, WCT Investments. I live in East Peoria, Illinois. So I was going to talk about this when the vacation came up, but I'll talk about it now. I'm prepared to do that. Okay. the vacation of Fairhaven is 14,800 square feet of land. And the reason that in the discussion with staff, it was brought to, the staff was the one that brought the idea up of vacating Fairhaven, and they really asked us if we would be willing to take it off their hands, take off the road, off the city requirement from, having to maintain it and that kind of stuff. Just want to make sure that everyone understands that the vacation of Fairhaven, that land is not buildable. Either there's a sewer line and a water line, a sewer main and a water main that run right down the middle of that street. So we can't build anything on top of it. We can put a parking lot on it, but we can't build on there. And in the process, WCT has agreed to build the turnaround at the bottom of at the bottom of Fairhaven, and we've also agreed to rebuild the right in and right out on 53rd Street. So those are going to be our expenses. And the reason the city or the staff came up with the idea of closing or vacating Fairhaven is because we have a contiguous commercial district now, really from Elmore Avenue all the way over to Lorton Avenue. If we would have just left those two houses in there, then we would have had two residential properties right in the middle of this large, area of commercial development. So it really made great sense from their standpoint, and we were willing to, to step up and purchase those houses to accommodate the complete zoning of a large area. As far as it's my understanding that if this is approved next week and to vacate this street, Fairhaven Avenue, that there'll be another public hearing that'll take place to actually convey the street from the city to the developer. And I think that to answer your question directly, WCT is willing to talk with staff to potentially contribute, for the whatever they want to use the money for, if it's to rebuild Lorton or whatever it needs to be. But I think that we need to address that after we get the approval, and we would address it in the public hearing for the conveyance of Fairhaven to the developer.
Thank you for that willingness to talk with them about helping with that. So I appreciate that, sir.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Good.
Alderman Condon.
Thank you, Alderman Grip. The storm water retention system, we're going to be using a lot of those as our stormwater requirements have changed, and that particular system required maintenance. Can I ask staff, do we have any way set right now to police the continual maintenance of these things so that they continue to perform at an optimal level?
Brian Shad, Public Works. To point yet, we've not had private development using the underground storage like that yet. We do have the standard detention basins, and they are required to sign a maintenance agreement. Not only that they'll keep trash out of it, they'll keep it functioning. They'll allow staff to check to make sure the required volumes are there. We'll have access to the site, so we feel comfortable that they will maintain it.
Alderwoman McGinnis.
Thank you, Alderman Grip. Brian, you might need to stay up. Maybe not you, I'm not sure. There has been much conversation about the contrast with St. Ambrose, the St. Ambrose system, and the system that's being proposed. Could someone, and I don't know from where, talk about if these systems are different, how they're different, and also the video brought a question up about, it talked about letting groundwater sleep slowly out or release it into the system, and I think we've heard that this proposal releases it slowly into the system, but I'd like clarification on that since there were two options shown in the video. So really two questions. How is this different than St. Ambrose, or is it? And the other question about how this system that will be installed will be.
This system is not, I would say, substantially different from the St. Ambrose system. Where this uses the, I typically refer to them as like a septic system, the half plastic tubes with the aggregate beneath it. The St. Ambrose system is actually 48-inch diameter, CMP pipe with holes drilled throughout it, and it's also surrounded by an aggregate system. And we usually typically figure about 40% of that aggregate, because of the space in between the rocks, adds to additional volume for that stormwater. So they both allow stormwater to pass to the rock underneath, and that allows it to recharge back into the system and slowly infiltrate. But then having the open area also allows slow transfer of that stormwater out in the system.
So it doesn't, there is not this release into the system option that we saw in the video at St. Ambrose, or there is?
There is. It's in this the St. Ambrose particular case. It's handled by a weir system, so it fills up the system and then it travels over, and that really helps you with those multiple events when you get multiple rains. It both percolates through the system. If I remember correctly, there are some small diameter tubes as well on the north end, which would act as that slower release rate as well.
And if you could answer my other question.
Davenport with Austin Engineering again. So this system, what we know about the soils here so far in the soil testing that we actually just completed in the last week, is our first percolation test has shown that we have more than 1 inch per hour of infiltration. And while that's great, because now we get to go ahead with our plans, the ordinance says that we need to at least provide that 1 inch per hour percolation rate in order to infiltrate into the ground. It's not enough to not have a discharge as well. So it's a combination. It's going to go into the ground, but it also has to have a very small pipe discharge, and that's what is known as a 2-year event. I don't know if we've been talking in the past. It's like a 6-inch diameter pipe, so it's very small. The amount of flow that's coming out of it in a cubic feet per second standpoint is like 6 feet wide and 3 or 4 inches deep. That's only at a 1% grade. If you have a steeper grade, it's even less of what you would call a water or a stream than that. So it's very minor flow that's going to be released from the system all the way up to the 100-year event that's stored. And all the time it's percolating as much as the ground can handle. And we think we're going to have some better percolation results because the first one we just looked at the top 3 or 4 feet. The next ones we're actually going to go down to the same level that the system's going to be at, and we've had those borings that show that our system has consistent soils all the way down, and we think these are head-driven type situations. So the first test that we did was only the 3 or 4 foot of water head on it, and these things are going to have more like 8 feet. So we think we're going to get more in the range of 2 to 3, maybe even 4 inches per hour of percolation into the ground. Okay? The St. Ambrose, I was going to mention earlier, the St. Ambrose, I'm not sure if they actually were just solving a problem or if it was a development-driven thing, but it was done in 2011, and since then you've had 2 additional ordinances that even make your ordinance even better than what it was then. So if it was development-driven in their design, ours is even more stringent than theirs was. Thanks.
Alderman Klool.
Thank you, Chairman Grip. Well, we've had a lot of discussion over the last 8 or 9 weeks regarding this issue, and Patricia, I always appreciate your coming to the fore with something new to consider, and certainly going to consider some of the thoughts that you had. Just a couple of things. I plan next week to spend a good deal of time talking about everything that's been discussed and my thoughts and the things that may have been resolved over the last 7 or 8 weeks. I wanted to talk about water. Water is an important issue. The legacy issues that have been brought up in the past, nobody's really brought that up tonight, but it is something that's been important. Some problems with water that have been present there on Lorton, Fairhaven for some time. So there was concern that the culvert under Lorton was blocked. It's not blocked, it's clean. And Public Works is going to, at least for a period of time, put that on a regular review list to make sure that that is not blocked, because that certainly could cause some problems down there. you know, what I tried to do when I held my meeting, my neighborhood meeting with the folks in Lorton 51st and Fairhaven, the intent was to pull people together and be able to get a broad spectrum of responses of what the people thought, you know, and I often think of those, the town hall meetings that were held in New England and the pictures of those things, and I think that's democracy in action, and I think that we did have standing room only, as Jeff said, for the meeting. Not all questions were answered. I don't think we tried to answer as many as we could. There were issues where we wanted to possibly get into talking about alternatives to the dead end versus cul-de-sac versus the 4 or 5 permutations of one-ways that could take place on Lorton. Those were all things too involved to try to get into that night, but I took that away, and I do believe, as I said last meeting, I like the dead-end cul-de-sac idea. I think for me it would have made sense. It maintains the area as a residential area, but it was clear that the community in that meeting was not in consensus in any way, shape, or form regarding that issue. So at that point, as I said last week, I was going to ask staff to put together a resolution to study for a year the traffic patterns on Lorton after Costco is developed and after, should this motion be approved, the Portillo development as well, to study and see what need there is for traffic controls there on Lorton. And I believe that taking an approach, a studied approach, is the right way to do it. I know that the delay doesn't make everybody happy, but I think it's the right thing to do in the long term. We did have, addressing the busing issue, of course, the school district Representative Mike Maloney was at our meeting that I held, and because I wanted that to be one of the issues that was addressed. And Mike said that there was a possibility that they could go down the Fairhaven cul-de-sac, and I hope that he's going to check that out, and I'll follow up with him, but I recommend that you folks that have kids get with the school district, get with Mike Maloney specifically, or school board members, and talk about that issue. There are some things that were brought up tonight that I'll be thinking about and talking with staff about this week. The final decision will be made next week, and council members have not made up their mind. I know I haven't. I'm still listening. I will listen until we vote, and at which time we will all move forward. And everybody won't be happy. Hardly any time is everybody happy about decisions that are made. But we'll move forward as a city, and what we do will be the best thing for Davenport, I'm certain. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Klool. Seeing no one else, we will keep that item on discussion and move to item number 2. Item number 2 is a third consideration for case number ROW 18-01, being the request of William Torsha on behalf of WCT Investments Davenport Series LLC for the vacation abandonment of 0.34 acre, more or less, of right-of-way known as Fairhaven Road, extending approximately 285 feet south from East 53rd Street to facilitate commercial development. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to comment on this item?
Good evening, Mayor, Davenport City Council. My name is Michael Malloy. I represent residents to the south on Fairhaven and Lorton who are opposed to this particular land vacation. You have in front of you about a proposal. Your own ordinance reads the request of William Torsha on behalf of WC Investments to abandon about 1/3 of an acre of public right-of-way. And you need to think about this in context of what the comments I've heard tonight from various aldermen regarding Lorton Avenue. I've heard the comments that we need to study the Lorton Avenue issue for over a year. Where has the city spent any time studying the issue of why and when Fairhaven Avenue will be closed and whether that creates any public safety hazard to the citizens and residents of the city of Davenport? You ought to apply the same standards that you're going to apply in this ordinance pertaining to Fairhaven to Lorton Avenue, because Lorton Avenue is the border on the west, on the south side of this property. Fairhaven is the border on the east, south side of this property. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. Let's look at both of these streets in the same context. Now, I heard Mr. Torsia tell you tonight, in fact, that he's willing to talk to staff about paying a fair market value for this land. That could conceivably present a win-win situation for the residents and the city council if the city council were to use that money to blacktop Lorton Avenue. You need to think about that one, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
Anyone else from the public who wishes to comment on this item? State your name, address, or ward, please.
David Odine, 2742 East 51st Street. Concerning the closure of this, of Fairhaven, I don't really care. If it's closed, fine. If it's left open, fine. I really don't care. I just came up here to point out the upside and the downside as I see it. There's the upside to closing Fairhaven is it protects the neighborhood. We have a lot of cut-throughs, a lot of cut-through traffic that's trying to miss the Lorton light now, and people to turn off 53rd and cut down through, and this would eliminate that. So that's a positive. On the negative side, all the 26 houses on Fairhaven that will be remaining, and the 7 on 51st Street, those 33 houses, everybody will be funneled across 51st Street over to Lorton. So it is going to increase the traffic on 51st Street because it'll be the only way for all those houses to get out. So that's a downside, but just thought I'd point those two things out. Thank you.
State your name and address or ward, please.
Patricia Bruner, 4840 Fairhaven Court. I do care. I live on Fairhaven. I do care if my road's closed. And as far as cut through, if you keep Fairhaven open as opposed to Lorton, have you ever tried to turn left off 53rd onto Fairhaven? You have a good chance of getting rear-ended, and you're probably going to be sitting there forever. And you're holding up all of the traffic going from east to west on 53rd right now because Novak Construction has 53rd down to one lane. So it's nearly impossible to turn left onto Fairhaven. So yes, it would just be the right-hand turns. Whereas on Lorton, there's a light, and you can sit there forever and wait to turn onto Lorton, and eventually you'll get to turn on to there, and probably faster than turning at Fairhaven. But the cut-through traffic would be greatly reduced if you switched from Lorton closed and Fairhaven open. And there are still homes that are left on the outlier areas of this development just to the west of Lorton that no one cares about. So they care about the ones to the east of Fairhaven, the 2 homes there, but no one cares about the 2 homes to the west of Lorton that will be left and not part of this development. Thanks.
Jeff Talbert, 4822 Fairhaven. I also am affected by the closing of Fairhaven Road, but I have a slightly different perspective. Again, I come from the idea of safety for not only the people traversing 53rd Avenue, but the neighborhood and keeping it quiet, which is why I'm so adamant about what we're doing over on Lorton. And I've heard the comments, well, if you're going to close one without a traffic study or any long-term research, why can't we do something with Lorton? I've heard I want access to 911 emergency responders, and I'm affected by that. But I've also come to terms that I think that's okay in my particular case because it's moving forward for the community, and it does kind of secure and isolate the neighborhood. One of the other things that I would like to bring up is I'd like to continue the letter that I was talking about, because I think both the Lorton and Fairhaven are kind of tied together. We're talking about making changes to traffic flow without any real information on how it's going to affect traffic as far as what a real survey would do, knowing we've got a lot of construction going on. So I'd like to continue and I call on the City Council to reject the suggestion that the traffic and safety issues be tabled for a year, and that you instead immediately approve and implement the following action plan. I'd like to see restrict all southbound traffic access from 53rd Street to Lorton Avenue by installing, costs a lot of money, no left turn, no right turn, do not enter signs at the intersection. Additionally, right turn only and left turn only as needed for the Jersey Meadows apartments. Northbound traffic would remain unaffected, and emergency vehicles would have complete access, which would remain in place if they needed to travel southbound on Lorton Avenue. I firmly believe that this simple and inexpensive plan is a compromise needed to protect the residents of all the parties involved, and thus facilitating that win-win that I talked about. I don't know if you opened the email that I had forwarded, but I also have a very rudimentary diagram of how that traffic could flow. And I really think that in light of what we're seeing on 53rd and the concerns of the citizens here, that tabling an action plan and putting off safety for a year is definitely detrimental to the entire community. And one benefit to this plan, it's very simple. It may actually increase a little bit of flow or stop the congestion on 53rd, which would facilitate flow. I would like you to consider these points. Thank you.
Is there anyone else from the public who wishes to comment? State your name and address or ward, please.
William Torsha, WCT Properties, East Peoria, Illinois. There's been a lot of talk about all the negatives that this development or this potential development could create for all the folks in the neighborhoods, and we really haven't ever talked about anything about the good that it will create. And I think that we have to take a moment and just look at the other side of the coin. The current 9 properties have a real estate tax, their real estate tax bill combined is about $23,800 a year, okay? I took 4 buildings, like buildings of what we plan to build, from existing buildings that are actually in the city of Davenport, and came up with a real estate tax value of $258,000, which is a $235,000 annual increase in property tax value, or property taxes. Now, this $235,000 goes to help the schools of the city of Davenport for all of the citizens of the city of Davenport, and the city itself's share is about $88,000. And I think you folks all saw this in a memo that the staff sent out more than 3 or 4 weeks ago. It was actually on July 23rd, 2018. The other thing that's going to happen is that this is, as we talked earlier, approximately a $15 million construction project, okay? And there's about $6.5 million worth of construction labor jobs that are going to be created. They're going to happen in the next 12 months if this is approved. So we're going to spend $6.5 million on labor for all those good-paying jobs of all those construction workers that live here in the community. And I think you have to take into consider that. There's going to be hundreds of jobs, and then on top of that, these businesses are going to generate a number of jobs that are going to be ongoing jobs for the citizens of Davenport. And they will be fully involved in the communities. I know that we've talked about Portillo's, and I know that Portillo's is very, very good at giving back to the community, and they're a great community citizen, and I think they would make a great community partner with everyone here in Davenport. And I know that there's been, the salesman's not here tonight, and I'd be remiss if I didn't be the salesman that I am, and I'm asking you for your vote in favor of this project next Wednesday. Thank you very much.
Is there anyone else from the public who wishes to comment? State your name and address for ward, please.
Adam McWilliams, 5th Ward. I'm not against Portillo's coming, but it could go in a different spot because 53rd is congested enough as it is, and with Costco going in across the street, it's just adding more to the mess. So I'm opposed against this. Thank you.
One more thing, Charlotte McManus, 4728 Lorton Avenue. You were just told what the property taxes were for the homes that were sold. I realize that isn't, when he's told what you're going to be getting, it's a lot. I'd like to know, and I asked last week, each of those homes that were sold, they went for so much money over what they were worth because they wanted these homes. And I'd like to know the total dollars that were spent on the homes that were purchased. I think that's important because if there's more development coming to the west, I think people would like to know what they're going to be paid. It was an enormous amount because I've talked to them. And I think some said they had already closed. So if this perhaps would not pass for some reason, if legally or something was to be done, they'd have to rent out those homes, I believe. But I don't know if that's a viable question to ask, but I'd sure like to know. And I asked it last week, if we could know the dollar amount spent on the homes that were purchased. That's all.
City Administrator Spiegel, would you like to comment?
So the purchasing and the sale of property is a private transaction. The city has no place in that. But when the properties do close, that information is available publicly on the Scott County Assessor's website.
Is there anyone else from the public who wishes to comment? Name and address or ward, please.
Ron Swainer, 2366 West 47th. I sat here before the council for Taco Bell in a neighborhood similar as these people are talking about here, to protect the neighborhood. What happened? You listen to the citizens. You know, this is not a financial or money issue. I know a lot of you don't care me sitting here talking. You're off in your own little world, but as a citizen here, we've all spoke our piece. You know, you protected one neighborhood. What is the difference between that neighborhood by Our Lady of Victory and JFK School than this neighborhood? There is none. They belong to the citizens of Davenport. It is our neighborhoods. Yes, there is development. Yes, we need this and that. But you also got to remember, these people pay the taxes. They elect you as our representatives. If we continue to ignore our citizens, you know, look at Eldridge, look at Long Grove, look at Parkview, look at LeClaire, look at Bluegrass. Part of the reason these people are building out there is because we are not listening. We are not doing what's needed, not what's right. We need to do what's needed to make this a better community. It's not always about dollars and cents, but it's about common sense. And as we proceed with this, I haven't been able to make many meetings here lately because of family issues, but I've been following along, and I just like this council to always remember, we the citizens, we the people, give them a break, you know, listen to them. You know, it's not always about X amount of tax dollars. Yes, we need the revenue, but we're also driving people out of town because we're not taking care of the neighborhoods. We're not listening to the people. And I think it's time we stop and take a step back and listen to them more. If we want to be a viable city and to expand and to grow, you got to start listening to your citizens and not the almighty dollar. Thank you.
Is there anyone else from the public who wishes to comment? Seeing no one, I'll open it up for discussion. Alderman Condon.
Thank you, Alderman Grip. The item up for consideration right now is the abandonment of Fairhaven Road, and I'll get there. But there has been a lot of different branches of this discussion, and I feel like I'll do the courtesy of thinking out loud, if not taking a risk in doing so. But when Costco came to 53rd, those residential properties on the other side of the street immediately became very challenged. And the reason, I think it's fair to say, that they were under contract for so much money, because at some point, from an open market perspective, highest and best use becomes commercial, and the land underneath those houses became more valuable than the houses themselves from a market perspective. So when this development came forward, it seemed like a fortuitous event, because rather than having those individual parcels pecked at individually, we had a broader brushstroke that came before us, seeking a zoning that in PDD provided us the most amount of control to protect the neighborhoods behind them. And we've been, I would say, fortunate to be working with a developer that's been very responsive to both the city's concerns and the neighborhood's concerns. And the closure of Fairhaven Road seemed like a really logical extension of this development, because it does protect the neighborhood. And now, as we discuss the closure of Fairhaven Road, and I mean this in no disrespect, but have you ever been in an argument that you feel so passionate about that you forget what side you're on? I want badly to understand from the community whether they think both closing Fairhaven Road is a good idea and whether or not they think Lorton closing would be a good idea. But I feel like we should remind ourselves that we're actually in a really good situation, because we can figure this out as we go. And just like we don't need to decide right now whether or not Lorton closes, if it becomes obvious that Lorton does need to close, we don't need to wait a full year. So, again, I just wanted to do you the courtesy of thinking out loud and helping you understand the perspective of a councilman doing his very best to make his way through this issue, as you guys have brought some really great discussion before us. And one other thing that I am considering, just from a perspective standpoint, for the sake of thinking out loud, is if the fire station wasn't so immediate, would that be on the forefront of everyone's mind? When it comes to the closure of these roads, I'd encourage us all to lean really heavily on the fire department and look at the data, because you can't help but think about what the response time would be. But if that fire station was another half block or just around the corner out of eyesight, I don't know if it would be on the lips of quite so many people that take this into consideration. So I look forward to next week's meeting, and I just wanted to give you some insight as to what one councilman's perspective is as I grapple with this. Thank you.
Alderwoman Rawson.
Thank you, Chair. I actually have a question for Mr. Talbert, if you would. No, I actually appreciate the time and effort that you put into. I studied your diagram, so I just want to understand, because I think you might have a solution here, but I just want a clarification. So on your diagram, I understand the no left turn, correct, the no right turn, that makes sense. It decreases traffic. But then you have the do not enter sign. Wouldn't that affect you all in the neighborhood as well? Because it effectively makes Lorton a one-way, which I know another gentleman had mentioned about 4 weeks ago.
Closing off Fairhaven affects us, the development affects us, but there is a price to pay for a little bit of peace and safety. And after talking to most of the people in the neighborhood, not all of them, when I circulated my petition, that was one of the things that they would accept.
Was it a do not enter sign?
Was a
Lorton?
What they called it, I called it a virtual cul-de-sac, basically, which the original intent was that nobody could exit or enter the neighborhood. It was only reserved for emergency vehicles. But since the meeting that we had with all the residents, there are a number of residents who would like to continue to have access to 53rd. I'm happy with the cul-de-sac personally, but I'm not here to express my views to you at this moment.
No, just the do not, but on your letter you had specifically mentioned the do not enter sign.
Do not enter from the north. In other words, that would block traffic from the south. There was some talk about a one-way that was considered.
Right.
And if you look at that model, you are actually taking probably a small number of residents and you're restricting them from what the rest of the residents would have in the same neighborhood. This would accomplish the same effect as a one-way.
That's what I was wondering.
Without actually affecting every citizen in that block.
But how would it not affect everyone? Because you'd only be able to go one direction.
You could go both directions. Any house on Lorton Avenue could travel north or south. Any traffic,
but just not entering from 53rd.
Just not entering from 53rd.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, and well done.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. I like it. It's well done.
Seeing no other comments from other aldermen, I will make a comment. So one of the questions is, why would you consider closing Fairhaven and keeping Lorton open and then not making the same consideration? And for me, when you have two, you have multiple options. You take it down to one, you still have an option to exit. Then it becomes binary. If you take away one more, now you have zero, you have no options to exit. So whether it was Fairhaven or whether it was Lorton, that neighborhood still has an opportunity to go north onto 53rd. And as we had that discussion, it became apparent to me that that was a concern of a lot of people. And we have gotten several emails from folks who, and that's the point they've made, we live in the neighborhood, we want to have the option to come out onto 53rd. So for me, that's why you still have the option if you keep one open, and I understand why staff chose to keep the option to propose the option that they did. I understand why the developer was okay with that, and I would have given the same consideration if the developer and the city would have said we should close Lorton and keep Fairhaven open. I would have given it the same, but that's not what they came to us with. But to me, the important part is we still have some connectivity. So when we talk about that cul-de-sac, anybody up here who's heard me talk knows that I'm typically very against cul-de-sacs. I've spoken out about them a lot. I like connectivity. I like the grid system. I wish we would do more of that. But understanding the needs of the neighborhood, I said I'm open to that. And again, it comes back to when you ask folks, you get different opinions of what they want. And at this point, I'm going to follow with Alderman Kluhl's proposal that we look at this, we look at all of our options, we include the neighborhood, and we try to make a decision based on the facts, not on feelings. Because right now, we don't have the traffic issue, we have a perceived traffic issue. And I know some of you will disagree with that, but that's okay. We are tracking the data of Lorton. And we will be able to deal in facts, and we'll be able to deal with it as we see more traffic come on. And I think that's a good approach, and that's why we'll talk about it later, support Alderman Kluhl's proposal on that. Alderwoman McGinnis?
I will try to be brief, thank you. I did have one question for staff. The proposal of the no entry without a cul-de-sac, is it possible to do? Is there anything in state traffic codes that would not allow this to happen? what would it cost? Those questions.
So we would want to consult with the city's traffic engineer, but we can get that information to you.
Okay, thank you.
Seeing no other comments from my colleagues, this item will stay on discussion, and we'll move to item number 3, which is an ordinance for case number REZ 18-09, being the request of Jared Engler on behalf of McCarthy Improvement Company for the rezoning of 1.5 acres, more or less, located at the northeast corner of Utica Ridge Road and East 56th Street from CO Office Shop District to C1 Neighborhood Shopping District to facilitate commercial development. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to comment on this item? State your name and your address or ward, please.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council. My name is Daryl Moore, and I live at 4234 East 59th Street in the Villas of Crow Valley. And I have several questions, but first of all, one of the things that I want to express to you is you realize that this was brought forward with a recommendation for denial by the Planning and Zoning Commission. And one of the issues that I have is really what has changed since the comprehensive plan was approved by the City Council in 2005 to justify a rezoning from CO to C1. I was here last week and heard some of the arguments, and I did have a chance to listen to the woman from Pure Salon. That's the group that is wanting to develop on this land. But I do believe that they would be able to expand their current services if they remain a CO development. And I am one of the unique lots currently in the villas that does back up to a CO development. And I will tell you that there is a huge difference between a CO type development and a C1 type development. I get traffic in the back of my land, which is contiguous to Mutual Med, and I'll get traffic between maybe 7 and 8 in the morning, and then I'll get traffic between maybe 4 and 6 in the afternoon when the employees come and go. Some UPS trucks, some FedEx trucks, but most of the time after 6 o'clock in the evening and all weekend, it's very quiet. In the back of my villa, I can sit on my porch and it's very quiet. A C1 zoning, although right now we're talking about Pure Salon, which is a rather benign development, which not be terribly disruptive, and I do know that there are some other parameters as part of this proposal. But once you make the determination to go C1, that really opens the door to all other types of developments that could be quite disruptive to the neighborhood, because once the door's open, it can't be closed. We could be looking at restaurants, taverns, wine gardens, not just Pure Salon. Another concern I have is because I really have not heard in my mind justification to change this from a C0 to a C1. If this can easily be changed without much justification, what's to prevent other COs, which really circulate all of the villas of Crow Valley, to a C1 or a C2? And that definitely also would impact me because I have a CO on the side of my property. So I am asking you to hold the denial that's sent to you for recommendation by the Planning and Zoning Commission because I do not see a justification to make that change. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else from the public who wishes to comment? Step to the lectern, state your name and address or ward, please.
Good evening, Council, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for giving us time. My name is Lucia Moore. I live at 4222 East 58th Street in the Villas of Crow Valley. A few years ago, there was a TV station called Who Do You Trust? Well, that's the kind of game that we're playing currently in the Villas of Crow Valley, and we've been playing it for the last several months. Do we trust the builder, like they did back in the year 2000 when the development was begun? Do we trust the developer, the realtor? They all said in the past, the zoning is CO and will not change, so you are safe. Really? Well, fast forward, and we are now losing the game of trust. Trust is no longer an issue, it's off the table. And no, we do not want to compromise. We want CO zoning to stay in place as the Planning and Zoning Committee recommended. If that changes, why have a Planning and Zoning Committee? Our reasons for not supporting the compromise are, number one, it's a breach of trust and goodwill. Number two, C1 will open the door to businesses we really don't want in our neighborhood, such as been mentioned before, a wine bar, restaurant, etc. Number three, compromise on this and it opens the door on the future compromises, and gas stations, here we come. And that will spell the downfall of our neighborhood and the peaceful atmosphere that we bought into, which I might add was a boatload of money. Let me be perfectly clear. If you let it happen here, you can let it happen anywhere. Any of your homes, they're not safe. They're zoned, oh, well, we wink at the zoning, right? Please don't let that happen. Now, this is what we want the council to do. Don't change the zoning at all. Go with the Planning and Zoning Committee and the 64 families who do not want their neighborhood ruined. Would you honestly want this happening where you live? Thank you for your time.
Is there anyone else from the public who wishes to comment on this item? State your name and address or ward.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. My name is Kathy Johnson. I live at 5802 Crow Valley Park Drive. If you've read all the comments opposing this petition, you might better recognize my husband's name, Rod Johnson. I just want to make a couple of comments regarding the petitioner's representation of our neighborhood meetings. Both of those meetings were packed with concerned residents. Obviously, the developer recognized that there were many objections in that first meeting on July 2nd. Thus, the reason they proposed an amendment to their petition, or was it a strategy to begin with? Anyway, in addition, the city staff had recommended that the Zoning Commission forward the request to the council with a recommendation of denial. Then in the second heavily attended neighborhood meeting, as the developer presented their revised plan, it remained obvious that there was still much concern. Restrictions of use were added by the developer as a compromise, and then the final concession offered was that they would only request Lot 1 to be rezoned to C1. By that time, it seemed the residents were becoming a little fatigued with the process. I also believe that there is a feeling that we as residents do not have the necessary clout that it takes to counter this position. Therefore, the compromise may have appeared acceptable. However, there was great relief when the recommendation from the Zoning Commission came back in favor of the residents with a denial of petition. Initially, I think residents felt that they had succeeded without understanding the process. At this point, I do have a question for the council. I wonder if the future land use map with zoning designations are a generic concept or if they are a well thought out plan which deserves careful consideration. With all due respect, what does it take for the council to adhere to a plan and concur with the recommendations of a zoning committee? I realize there has been a compelling emotional request from the buyer with a promise of substantial revenue back to the city. However, I believe that is possible on other properties that have proper zoning if they want to exceed that CO zone. I don't think that the comment that I have the money and I want this particular lot overrules the concerns of residents who have also made a difference in their community. These are professional people who love their neighborhood and wish for wise development for the betterment of all. It really is about the money, isn't it? Whether it is in business or in sports or in politics, the quality of life rarely becomes the priority. Sad. Thank you.
Is there anyone else from the public who wishes to comment on this? State your name and address or ward, please.
Good evening. I'm Steve Powell, 4210 East 58th Street. I can't say it any better than what has just been presented to you for the last three presentations. When I moved into that area, I was also told that that was going to remain C0. Being a business building owner myself, I've actually even turned down tenants because they didn't fit the model of the area that our building is in Bettendorf. That is very important that we respect that. I don't know what's supposed to go in on either side of this salon, but it should be a C0 office space or something that's compatible, not something that's at odds with what the wishes of our community are. Another reason I'm here is I heard somebody represented that there wasn't anybody in our neighborhood that was against this. And I'm here to tell you that's absolutely not true. And I think the well-spoken ladies that were just up here and the representation that's here upholds that thought. Thank you.
Is there anyone else from the public who wishes to comment? State your name and address or ward, please.
Mayor, council members, I'm Greg Bush, and I'm the developer. I'm also an owner of a villa at Crow Valley. And in the effort of full disclosure, I am currently selling that condo to my brother, who is going to be moving into that neighborhood. Additionally, I have another brother that lives in that neighborhood and a sister that lives in that neighborhood. So we are as invested in this neighborhood as the people that spoke before me. I'd like to make two quick points. The first point is that I'm a fourth generation member of this area and have been developing the Crow Valley area for 33 years. I've done this development with a commitment to the highest quality. Our family has always been very interested in legacy. My grandpa and my great-grandpa built the Black Hawk Hotel. They built the bridge piers on the Centennial Bridge. And whenever I drive past one of these icons, I'm reminded that we don't build for just today, we build for the future. And every time I drive past, I'm proud. Well, let me tell you that the Crow Valley area development is my personal legacy. I am very proud of this development, and I perceive it as one of the highest quality developments in the Quad City area, and I don't intend to do anything to denigrate or reduce that legacy. The building, as proposed, will add to that legacy and will be viewed as a positive addition to the neighborhood, the people of the area, and my children and grandchildren as they drive past. My second point is this: opportunity. I want to see growth in our area, and I want to see Davenport thrive. In that very vein, we subdivided a corner lot, which, as you may be aware, somewhat dissipates the value of the land around it because of that subdivision. So we basically lowered the overall potential for financial gain in that corner. Additionally, we accepted a lower than market value price for a very desirable corner on Utica Ridge. Why would we do that? Well, for a lot of reasons. But one of the reasons was to give an opportunity to a young couple with a dream to grow their business and to thrive in Davenport. But this was not done in a vacuum. We didn't do this without some consideration to the neighbors. As the previous people said, we had some significant meetings, and they were not always pleasant. These were my neighbors, and they still are my neighbors, and they're my brother and sister's neighbors, and we intend to live there. They intend to live there for a long time. I'll probably move back there too eventually. But it wasn't done in a vacuum, and we all came to, after a long series of discussions, came to a compromise. And we weren't happy, and they weren't happy. And traditionally, that's what gets you a general agreement, is that both sides are a little bit not happy. Despite that, there are still some that are continuing to push for more and more restrictions. For this vocal group, there will never be enough concessions. We have made significant reductions in quality and quantity and size and scope of our zoning request, and we've mitigated the impact to the neighborhood. I cannot in good conscience place more restrictions on this young couple's ability to pursue their dream. I ask you to consider and decide this case on the merits. Thank you very much.
Is there anyone else from the public who wishes to comment? Anyone from the council? Seeing no one, I guess I will make one comment. One thing I wanted to talk about was the future land use map, which is a guide for future use of land in the city of Davenport. We do it, is it every decade? Or every? It was updated in 2016, but does it have to be updated every decade or so, or not mandated? Okay, so it depends. It's a general guide. It is not zoning. If it were the rule of law, then we wouldn't have the planning and zoning, which we deal with 5 to 10 rezonings every cycle here at the council. So while it's a guide, this is why we have the process. The city staff looked at this. They looked at it. They looked at it on its merit, and they said this should be approved. P&Z looked at it on its merit, and they came to the conclusion it should not be approved. And now it comes to us. And up here, we will look at this case based on the merit, and we will try to come up with a decision whether it should go forward or whether it shouldn't. But you have 3 different entities looking at this and trying to decide. And what we're trying to decide is, for this piece of land that's being brought to us, is the C1 designation a proper use for that land? And that's the question that we're asking, that we're faced with. And I've already stated how I feel about it. This is not a nuisance zoning. This fits in with the Utica Ridge corridor, and the developer came to the table with one plan. They made a lot of concessions, changed the plan, and came back with something different. I think it's an acceptable use of the land, and my colleagues will have to make the decision of whether they think that as well. And Alderman Kluhl.
Thank you, Chairman Grepp. As 6th Ward Alderman, I just wanted to say a couple of things. First of all, again, thank you for your articulate presentation of the issues and your concerns. And one of the hardest things that I found on this job is trying to balance commercial development and residential needs, residential requirements. And just to reiterate what Council Member Grip said, is that we do have a reason for P&Z, and it's because times change. We've talked a lot about what's going on now on 53rd. Times have changed, and so plan and zoning, there's an opportunity for citizens, for developers to come in and request a change to zoning because of change that's happened, and that's what's happened here. On the other hand, one of the things that really pains me is listening to residents talk about the homes that they bought on what they perceive as a promise of the kind of development that is going to go on next door to them. And I would like to think that those are promises, but they are not promises. Those are zoning maps. Those are intentional directions in which the city tries to plan its path forward, so that it's not just happenstance that we develop. We've talked a few weeks ago about the overlay concept for Elmore Corners. That's, again, another attempt to try to lay out where we're going. And times change. And so I do feel that concern deeply, that some folks from the villas especially, have made intentional purchases based on what they perceived as promises. And perhaps what we need to do is to help people understand that, in fact, this is part of a planning process. Those weren't promises made, but I can certainly understand why you come here to this council expecting that they were. So I appreciate your concerns. We'll continue to talk through this into the 3rd reading. Thank you.
Seeing no one else from council, that item will remain on discussion. We'll move to item number 4, which is a first consideration ordinance amending the boundaries and exemption schedules of the Central City and North Urban Revitalization areas. Before I open it up to public, I would like Suzanne Knutson to come up and speak on behalf of staff.
Suzanne Knutson, Community Planning and Economic Development. to follow along with council goals of doing urban revitalization, we've taken the past 6 months and looked to see what we could do to improve our areas and improve the usability of the program. We'll see if I can do it without. So what we did, cancel. And it's not a touch screen. I'm used to my home computer.
When a raindrop falls on a farm field, it is absorbed into the ground. Pulled by gravity, it moves through multiple soil layers, which fill.
Here we go. So, what we have currently, my kids can do it without a mouse. I'm old school. I like a mouse. Good Lord.
While Suzanne's setting up, I'd just like to make a comment that we are planning to take a recess after the community development portion of the meeting.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Perfect. So what we have up on there now is kind of outlines what is proposed to change to. What the second map shows is what the changes are. So you will see in blue are the additions to the north area. Typically what we added were industrial areas. Oftentimes we have companies that are expanding and they're spending lots of money to do expansions in size. Maybe they're going to have jobs, maybe they don't want to commit to jobs, and so by expanding to those industrial areas, it offers the city to provide an incentive to them that doesn't tie them into jobs, and with the market fluctuations, that's very desirable for them. We've added in a few areas into the central city, right along Telegraph Road, and what we did was we had 3 areas before, now we've cleaned it up, more consistent, and have 2 areas. The second thing we did was take it from 10 schedules, so this beast where people would say, this is confusing, and I'd say, yes, I know, let me help you out, to simply 4 schedules. If only my kids were here, they'd laugh at me. So we have 3 schedules for the central city, 2 schedules for the north. We were challenged by council to say, are we doing all we can for the central city? In fact, there was a schedule we found out there for residential. Prior to this, we only had 10-year exemption for multifamily, so commercial residential, 3 units or above. There is a proposal now that we would do 10 years for residential. So residential, duplex, anywhere in the central city that you build, including, say, condos downtown, single-family homes as infill, those would have 10 years of property tax exemption on that improvement in value. So if you're building something brand new, urban homesteads, that's a really big value to that central city. It's a little bit less in the north area, but it reflects what we've had currently going on in the north area. So.
Thank you. We'll ask questions after we've done public with comment. Thank you. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to comment on this item? All right. We'll move to council discussion. Alderwoman McGinnis.
Thank you, Commissioner Grip. I'm sorry. I just wanted to just say how excited I am that we're able to do this. The fact that we have, I know that in our core areas, in our central city neighborhoods, what I call our heritage neighborhoods, we have had a good approach to this and have tried to be as generous as we can be. So I am really pleased, and I've said this before, but I want to say it again, that we have this available. Revitalization is extremely important, and to be able to offer this to people either improving buildings, improving houses, or building new, in terms of that revitalization is extremely important. So I'm very excited about this. It's the very we're doing the very best thing that we can given our state guidelines for this area, and I'm very, very supportive of it. And thank you.
Alderman Mattson?
Thank you, Alderman. Ma'am, it said multi-residential. Please define that for me. Single-family homes is wonderful. Define multi-residential.
Multi-residential is considered 3 units or more.
So apartments.
Correct.
So we're 100% tax break for apartments.
Yes, that is what has been.
I'm very concerned about that. Thank you.
Alderman Ambrose?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Susan? You know, as a professional, you've been dealing with it a long time, but we have a lot of people in our community that have been contacted by the city on this.
Mm-hmm.
Simply clarify what this is and how it works. Not so much the areas.
Sure.
But for the layman that got a letter from the city that have called me up, it's a little bit confusing.
Sure. What the URTE program is, or Urban Revitalization Tax Exemption, that's why we use URTE for short. Anytime you do improvements, I always tell people when they walk in, because we send out 9,000 postcards, and I would say we've talked to probably 300 to 350 people, either on the phone or by walk-in. I'll tell them anytime something hits your pocketbook or you have to pull a permit, the city assessor is notified of that. So anytime you're spending money on your house by making improvements, that you should always apply for the program, because you never know what's going to increase your assessed valuation. That being said, you change out the water heater, not so much. You change out a roof, maybe for the average house, not so much, but in Alderman McGinnis's ward, if it's a house that has been without a good roof or without a furnace, when you're adding in those things, those can definitely increase your assessed valuation. So the city assessor already knows what you're doing. You might as well take advantage and apply for the program. It's about a page, I think a page and a half. You have to sign your name on the back. Very simple. You can do it. Your contractor can do it. And then as far as process goes, annual deadline for applications is February 1st. So anytime you do work, we encourage people to apply for this program.
Thanks, Susan. Historically, government bureaucracy can be challenges to the average person. And I would just ask, as this incredible tool moves forward, that we try to simplify the experience for the homeowners and the businesses that are interested in this. Thanks.
Thank you.
Alderwoman Rawson?
Thank you, Chair. You don't have to stay up here. Just a couple of things. One is there any way, I know someone mentioned this at briefing yesterday, can we get this somewhere prominent on the website? So I actually went in and tried to find it, and I couldn't do it fairly easily. If we can get it somewhere prominent so people don't have to hunt like I did, that would be nice. And I fully support URT. I think it's a great program. I just, again, want to remind everyone that it's not as beneficial if you have an older home, if you're a homeowner in older parts of the city, because the tax break is for the difference between the current assessed value and the increased assessed value. So if you think about putting a new roof on your house, that really doesn't necessarily increase the value of your house a whole lot. And the only reason I'm saying this is, again, fully support URTE. It's a great program, but as we move forward with urban revitalization, we really do need to fill in those gaps with other programs that overlap so that other residents in the city can actually take advantage of something that is as lucrative as it will be for multi-residential with 100% tax break for 10 years. Thank you.
Alderwoman Dickman.
Thank you, Your Honor. And I wanted to, I wasn't sure if this has been clarified that this is a tool for reinvestment, one of many. Hopefully we'll keep coming up with more. But, when we hear conversations about, well, why aren't you building here and why aren't you building there? We are trying to do that. It is a very complicated puzzle, and we would love to see a lot of reinvestment in our core neighborhoods and our inner city and things like that. And so this is one of many tools that will hopefully spur reinvestment, some redevelopment, and really create a new set of thriving people living in those neighborhoods. Thank you.
Alderman Condon.
I just wanted to express some excitement because 100% for 10 years, that's bonkers. I personally used this program on the old program, and it wasn't near as lucrative, but it's still exciting. And because revitalization is one of our key goals, and we're looking for ways to create rehab and infill opportunities, I just wanted to cry out to people that if you've ever considered doing something I'm going to say romantic, like investing in one of the historic parts of our neighborhoods or the downtown or something like that, now's the time because, Davenport is moving in the right direction, and that's real money in your pocket.
Thank you, and I do have some comments as well. So I don't want to discount what Alderwoman Rawson said. There are limitations to this program, but I think we would agree that this is a good part of urban revitalization. This is going to be a good program for commercial development in places we want commercial development, and it's going to be good for residential redevelopment where we want residential redevelopment. Had a good conversation with Director Berger earlier, and I asked some questions, and it might be a good way to think about how you get this information out to folks, because it will impact people differently depending on if they currently own a home that is in the Erde district. How does it impact them if they want to make improvements? If they don't live in an Erde district, but they move there and they want to make improvements on the home that they move into, that affects them differently. And then the third one I came up with is it's actually most lucrative if you buy an empty lot or a property with a house that has hardly any value to it. Then you get a really big tax break for building new in the Erde district. So this can be a powerful tool, but at the very least it's a part of a plan. And I wish a lot of the folks from the 6th Ward wouldn't have left after those three discussion items, because I want to reiterate what Alderwoman Dickman said. So I get a lot of questions about, why are you, the city, putting all of this development out on 53rd and Elmore? But the fact is that these are private land transactions. These are people that are asking to locate there. They're coming to us. A property owner is being approached by somebody who wants to own property and open a business, and they're deciding to make a transaction. We're not incentivizing it. We're not giving them money. They simply want to do business there, and they're coming to us to ask for permission. If you look at these URTE maps, what you'll find is we are not incentivizing Northeast Davenport with this incentive. We're incentivizing South of Locust, some of our older corridors. So this is a tool to do revitalization. The market will continue to do what it's going to do out in Northeast Davenport, which it's going to continue to grow. We know that. But we're trying to incentivize as our central city and our older neighborhoods, and this is part of that. So let's move on to item number 5, which is a first consideration ordinance for case number REZ 18-10, request to rezone 24.27 acres, more or less, of property located south of East 53rd Street, immediately west of the Bettendorf city border, from R2 PUD, low-density residential district planned unit development, and PDD planned development district, to R5M PUD, medium-density dwelling district planned unit development. Jessica Tuttle, Thompson Thrift Development Company, is the petitioner. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to comment on this item? Sure. State your name, address, or ward, please.
Hi, I'm Jessica Tuttle. I'm the Director of Development for Watermark out of Indianapolis. There's just 2 items that I wanted to bring up for clarity. There were some comments earlier tonight. The first was about, is this going to be a long-term hold?
and do you manage your properties? I probably at the neighborhood meeting didn't have the facts in front of me, so I didn't want to throw out the wrong numbers, but I'm happy to say I can provide that tonight. So right now we have an in-house property management team. It's a very large team and it's growing. But they are managing 13 total properties today. 7 of our properties on top of that are under construction. So 20 of our 35 properties have not been sold and we don't plan to sell them. We build all of our product type to hold on to it long term. So that's why a lot of times I start with, here's what we plan to build, because we do day one plan to hold on to all of our properties. Unfortunately, we have to explain that we did sell some of our properties in the beginning. We started the company in 2008 and we needed liquidity. And a lot of our properties that we built at the beginning were in Denver, and so we sold those properties in Denver. So here in Iowa, this would be a long-term hold that we'd plan to manage. And then secondly, I didn't want to take up time earlier, but I did want to talk about the need that's here in Davenport. For cities, it's important to have diversity in housing. And one of the things we track when we look at different markets is the number of new employment in the area. So since 2010, there have been 8,200 new jobs created. Industry standard is for every 5 new jobs, 1 multifamily house or unit is needed. So that would be 1,600 units that you would want to be delivered to Davenport into this area since 2010. There have been 725. So we're at a shortfall right now of 900 units. So we feel confident that there is a resident here that will want to rent. And kind of what drives that demand, what we're seeing across the country, single family new construction is at an all-time low. There's not a lot of new single family being built, and it's very costly. So if you pair that with our average demographic, which is typically a little bit younger, they come out of college with more debt than anyone in the past. And so they're not going to be able to buy that single family home right away. So we're excited to be here in Davenport. We really think that there's a need and a resident out there that will rent what we're proposing. And I think that's it. Thank you.
Is there anyone else from the public who wishes to comment on this item? State your name and address or ward, please.
Thank you. Michael Ryan again, 4646 East 49th Court, 6th Ward. I kind of wanted to address something that was brought up a little bit ago in regards to promises that were made. I'm not sure who all was involved in the discussions in 2011, but I don't see a lot of familiar faces from those trenches. Because you've asked to not speak to anyone in particular, so I'm not speaking to anyone in particular, but just in general, I don't remember a lot of these faces from 2011. I was there, and there were promises made. In fact, if those promises hadn't been made, we wouldn't have accepted the compromise. We would have continued to fight. I understand that those promises that were made in what the final zoning was, it's a zoning, so obviously it can change. But we didn't fight the compromise zoning because the promises had been made that that's what they were going to try to achieve in terms of their development. Once again, I return to the antagonistic relationship that the owner has had with this neighborhood. Threatening to sell it to a big box retailer, using a loophole in the protest zone in order to cut our voices out of how it got developed. And now, in the intervening 7 years, it seems that she hasn't priced the property in a way that is in good faith with the promise that she had made by going for that development. So I'll just leave it at that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else from the public who wishes to comment on this item? State your name, address, or ward, please.
W.T. Gramp again, 6th Ward. On this thing with trust, it just astounds me that people make expensive choices with their real estate based on promises or guarantees from the city that this property is going to be a certain thing. So the concept of that's all flexible and that all changes doesn't wash with me. I mean, when we make any purchases, you know there's certain things you're going to expect from that product or service. If it changes, you'll change your decision too. So I guess this concept of the free-flowing zoning doesn't fit for me. So like, let's say I take my property, and since now I have 300 units behind me, I guess it's okay if I make my property a sixplex. I can put 2 units in the garage, I can put 1 in the basement, I can put 3 upstairs, so that's okay now. If none of it matters, then it should. Thanks.
Is there anyone else from the public who wishes to comment? All right. Seeing no one, we will move to council discussion. Alderman Madsen.
Thanks. On zoning, we talk about it almost every, I agree, Alderman Gibb, we talk about it about every council, and I've been here over 10 years. So, sir, you can use my name. I was one, and there's one other that was here during that time. We do zoning based on projects. We don't just change zoning because somebody up here says, you know what, this should be zoning. It's all based on someone coming to us and doing that, and we do that a lot. And I agree with Alderman Grip that it is a guide. We try and follow the guide. City staff tries to give us a good advice on what we should do, and the planning and zoning tries to give us good advice. And this place applies to a lot of things we're talking about tonight and every night, quite frankly. But it is up to us, and we try and listen to everybody and see what fits. And that's hard because the zoning does change a lot. In my tenure, we've changed a lot based on projects. So on this particular one, a couple questions for you, ma'am, if you would, just to clarify a little bit. Your presentation tonight, you mentioned managers. Are you going to have an on-site manager, or is the manager somewhere else?
Oh, we do. So for every 100 residents, we'd have at least 1 on-site property manager.
Okay.
So here's 3, and then 2
Yep.
full-time maintenance staff as well.
So pretty much 24/7, you'll have folks there.
24/7.
Okay, that's very helpful. Talk a little bit about, since that helps us, security thoughts about your area and all that.
Absolutely. So the development overall will be completely fenced and gated. So any vehicle that would pull up would have to fob in or keypad into our development. And then that helps a lot alone with crime. Another piece that we do in all of our communities is we offer reduced rent to any local police officer who would like to live in our community. That reduced rent, we give them a list of, can you walk the property? We put them in a unit up front and have their car up front. So that also helps with our properties.
They'll just park the car. No.
Yeah.
Thank you. That helps. So, thank you, ma'am.
Huh?
The on-site manager is important, I think. So, thanks for having that. To you, sir, I understand your point totally. The discussions we had here concerning that Foster Development 7 was enthusiastic, to say the least. But nothing's happened. And I've wondered many times why nothing is happening now. I wonder that. I don't go into detail and search out, like, and stand on the property and, scream and wonder. But I will say to the builder, one of the things that we were told when that was happening is we have interest. We have retail interest. We have a lot of interest, and something's going there. And then nothing did. So if you say interest, I hope your interest is more than just words this time, because we were told that last time and nothing happened. I like what you guys are doing. At least now we have a plan. We have an idea. It sounds like it's a pretty good plan. I'll be looking to more discussion and more thoughts from the neighbors, and I'll ask you guys to work with them and thoughts. But there is a concern that nothing has happened, and I'm glad to see something finally is. We can discuss a little bit more to help with the neighbors on what you can do, but it sounds like you're trying to do pretty good now. But more discussion is always good. But sir, I remember that a lot, and your points are valid as heck. And I was one of them sitting here. Thank you.
Alderwoman Dickman.
Thank you. Another question for Ms. Tuttle about parking this time, actually. So I wasn't able to tell from the renderings, is it one garage unit per unit, I guess?
Yeah, so with our rents, we wanted a mix of rents. So our one bedroom without a garage would be $1,200. So not every unit has a garage. With 16 units in one building, there's 10 garages.
Okay.
So that allows us, for the one bed without a garage, it's $1,200. For a one bed with a garage, it's $1,400. And then there's a mix of that for 2 and 3 beds.
Okay, and then is there close by parking for residents who don't pay for a garage spot then?
There are. It's all surface parking. We don't charge for surface parking. We only charge additional rent for a garage space. Here, this is going to be a really great property. We're parked at a 1.8 ratio. Most of our sites are at a 1.5 or a 1.7 ratio. So we're really happy we have the space to have ample parking for all of our residents.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Klool.
Thank you, Chairman Grip. Again, we've talked about zoning and planning and zoning, and again, if promises were made, they were made inappropriately based on a plan and zoning directive and code. Plan and zoning is a procedure, is a process, is a plan. Again, it's an intentional plan trying to move forward so that we don't move forward haphazardly. So if you perceive those as promises, and if they were presented as promises, I apologize for that. Well, we do need fidelity over time, and so I would like to assure that we do not make those kinds of promises. The only other thing I wanted to say at this point on first consideration, I wanted to clarify a comment made earlier during the public hearing that I might have said that people should move out of the 6th Ward. I will guarantee you, as 6th Ward Alderman, I would never advise anybody to move out of 6th Ward. It's where I live. I love 6th Ward. I think it's an exemplary ward. And look what we're talking about tonight. It's all 6th Ward. Now, what I did say is that if it were me, somebody asked, what would you do if this development were coming to your neighborhood? If I lived in that neighborhood and I did not want this property, I said I would do exactly what you're doing, which is to write letters of protest, to be at the P&Z meetings, to be here at the council meetings, exactly what you're doing. That's what I would do, because that's part of what we live for in this representative democracy. So you're doing what you need to do, but I don't want it to be thought that I would ever tell people to move out of the 6th Ward. I would not do that. Thank you.
Seeing no other comments, we'll move.
Mr. Chair, if I may,
Sure.
if you wouldn't mind, maybe we take the break now. We've been 2.5 hours, and we'll finish it afterwards. Yeah, I think I'm getting some nods from my colleagues. So if we may, if that's all right, if you would entertain that as a break now, we'll come back.
I'd entertain a motion to take a break.
Yeah.
So moved.
Great.
All right, 10-minute break. Be back at 8:21.
Thank you all. I'm going to again reconvene our meeting for after our break. I think all of us are back here and getting there. And I'm going to turn it back over to our Community Development Chair, Alderman Grip, to continue on item number 6.
All right, thank you, Your Honor. Item number 6 is a first consideration ordinance for case number REZ 18-11, request to rezone 13.65 acres more or less of property located south of East 53rd Street, west of the Bettendorf city border from R2 PUD and PDD to all PDD with a new land use plan. Kevin Kellner, Build to Suit, Inc. is the petitioner. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to comment on this item?
Kevin Kellner with Build to Suit, the petitioner. I just wanted to address one of the comments made earlier about the positioning of the commercial against the residential. We have worked with staff in that regard. On the east side of the site, we have stormwater detention buffering us there. On the west side of the site, which is where the particular resident lives that spoke tonight, with Ryan and Matt, we're going to, we have proposed, and we would adhere to zoning measures that we put in place on a parcel that is west of American Bank, and currently it's 2 Unity Point clinics. They're twin buildings there. Similar positioning against R1, and we increased the setback, fencing, buffering, things like that, and also the uses there. And so we did make provisions for that. It may not have been communicated, but staff knows of that, and we can certainly forward that information.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else from the public who wishes to comment on this item? All right, seeing no one, we'll go to discussion. Alderwoman McGinnis.
Thank you, Alderman Grip. Yeah, I did have a question about, I was confused about what restrictions you're putting on what would go there. What kind of surety, what conversations have you had with neighbors about what might be going into the commercial part of this? I didn't have a lot of clarity about that.
Well, right. So I'll try to answer that as best I can. We submitted a sort of a use designation map that we put together with staff. And again, by the R1 areas, we're limited to the uses there are going to be mostly or only office in one case, which is directly adjacent to the R1. And then in front of that to the north, which is on 53rd, we restricted the uses there to where we wouldn't have some of the allowed uses in the PDD governance. So it's going to be where we would limit that to office, medical, financial use, as opposed to fast food restaurant, convenience store, things of that nature.
Okay. And one other question: you're here. Is your intention to hold on to this development, or?
Well, I think as it develops, we would like to hold on. By nature, we like to build to suit, so we like to build it and lease it back to people. However, with the setup and the nature of some of the occupants that we expect we will get, we're going to have to sell lots in order to secure those tenants. They won't really be tenants; they'll own the property themselves. But where possible, yes, we would prefer to own it and lease it back. But where necessary, we expect we're going to have to sell some of the property. I can't tell you exactly how much or a ratio right now. That would be total conjecture, but we'd like to keep as much as we could.
Alderwoman Dickman.
Thank you, Your Honor. The restrictions, some of the things you said about setbacks and other descriptions of what kind of things are not, has that yet been formalized in writing?
Yes, it was formalized and it's submitted to staff.
Okay, just double checking.
Alderman Klool.
Thank you, Alderman Grip. Just a question again. On the plan, it shows buildings being one story, I believe, on the west. Are you planning one story throughout?
Again, with that same plan where we limited some uses in some places, we limit it to single story in certain places as well. And I think if we're two-story, we're in the center of the property so that we would be away from residential on east or west. So it'd be, we show an access drive on, two access drives. We're between the access drives to be two-story, I believe.
Okay. Thank you.
Seeing no other comments, we will move to item number 8, which is a resolution for case number FDP 18-02, request for a final development on 24.27 acres, more or less, of property located south of East 53rd Street, immediately west of the Bettendorf city border, to allow for development of a 304-unit, 19-building apartment complex. Jessica Tuttle, Thompson Thrift Development Company, is the petitioner, and it's noted in your packet that staff recommends tabling until the third consideration of the companion ordinance is presented. miss 7? Yep. Let's do, that was inadvertent. Let's do 8, and then I'll go back to 7 since I've already read it, if everybody's agreeable to that. Thank you, Your Honor. So staff recommends tabling because this corresponds to item number 6, and yeah. All right, there's a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. This item has been tabled, and we will go back to item number 7. Again, sorry for the mistake. Item number 7 is a resolution approving case number FDP 18-03, being the request of William Torsha on behalf of WCT Investments, Davenport Series LLC, for a PDD Plan Development District Final Development Plan on property located on the south side of East 53rd Street, approximately 385 feet east of Lorton Avenue. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to comment? State your name and address or ward, please.
Hello, Devin Birch with Austin Engineering on behalf of Portillo's and WDCT. This is the actual Portillo's kind of phase 1 final plan for just that piece of the property. And as much as we've talked about this, I'm just here to tell you that if you have any questions, I am available to answer them, hopefully. Thanks.
Thank you. Is there anyone else from the public who wishes to comment on this item? State your name and address or ward, please.
Patricia Bruner, 4840 Fairhaven Court. Alderman Dickman asked staff earlier for details of which are conditions and what are codes related to this development. I would also like to see that, especially since we're reviewing the final development plan. I've looked online and I can't really find very much about the final development plan. All I found, and I asked staff if that was all that was available, and staff told me it was like a 3-page picture. I think it was included in your agenda tonight. I realized that they said it's just Portillo's, but still I'd like some actual facts about, especially the buffer zone is my biggest concern. I'd like some actual facts and not proposals as we're getting closer, since the final development plan is already routing. I would like that information made public if that's possible. Thank you.
Is there anyone else from the public who wishes to comment on that item? All right, open it up for council discussion. Bruce, you want to get with her and make sure that she has whatever information we have. Thank you. All right, we are now to item number 9, which is a resolution approving case number CP 18-02, being the request of the City of Davenport to amend the Davenport 2035 future land use map designation from RG Residential General to Commercial Corridor on 6.5 acres of property, more or less, located along the south side of East 53rd Street, east of Lorton Avenue. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to comment on this item? Anyone from the council? This item moves on. Item number 10 is a motion directing staff to study traffic levels and speed on Lorton Avenue from 53rd Street to 46th Street to determine the impact to the residential neighborhood with the proposed commercial development along 53rd Street west of Elmore Avenue. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to comment on this item? Anyone from the council? Alderman Kluhl.
I just want to make a note that at next council meeting, I will propose to amend to make this time definite so that after 1 year, staff comes back with a recommendation. Thank you.
Seeing no other discussion, I would ask Alderman Kluhl to set the agenda.
Thank you, Alderman Grip. I move that items 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 10 be moved forward to discussion. Number 9 to consent, and number 8 tabled until the third consideration of the companion ordinance as mentioned.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Your Honor, that concludes community development for this evening.
Thank you, Alderman Grip and Alderman Klool, and all of our colleagues for their engagement with this very important topics. Our second area to be discussed is public safety, and Alderman Rosson will lead that discussion, and Alderman Condon will set the agenda.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'll read these by section and then ask for input. Section 1, resolution closing various streets, lanes, or public grounds on the listed dates to hold outdoor events. Downtown Partnership, alternating currents, August 24th through 26th, 8 a.m. Friday through 8 p.m. Sunday. Closure location, 2nd Street, from the east side of Perry Street intersection to the west side of the Iowa Street intersection for Chalk Art Festival, Saturday, August 25th, 7 a.m. through Sunday, August 26th, at 8 p.m., and Pershing Avenue from the north side of the 2nd Street intersection to the south side of the alley directly south of Clemmy's Classic Cars on Friday, August 24th, 8 a.m. through Saturday, August 25th at 10 p.m. Pershing Avenue between the south side of 4th Street intersection to the north side of the 3rd Street intersection on Saturday, August 25th, 7 a.m. to 8 p.m., and the food truck zone at Bechtel Park on Iowa and 2nd Streets on Friday, August 24th, 2 p.m. to Saturday, August 25th at midnight. Temporary no parking on the north side of 3rd Street starting at the west corner of Pershing Avenue along the south face of Raccoon Motel and Armored Gardens, Ward 3. City of Davenport Annual Halloween Parade. Already Halloween, trick or treat. Wow. October 27th, 10:30 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. Closure location will be the staging area. Closure location for the staging area, 3rd from Brady to LeClaire and North-South Streets between 2nd and 4th Street, closed at 10:30 a.m. Parade steps off at 2 p.m., 3rd Street from Brady Street to Ripley Street from 3rd Street to 2nd Street, 2nd Street from Ripley to Iowa, Iowa from 2nd to 3rd. Anyone from the public have any comments on either one of those two items? Anyone from council? Seeing and hearing no one, those two items will move on. Section 2, motion approving noise variance requests for various events. We have one item, Davenport Public Library, Eastern Avenue, library card sign-up party, Saturday, September 15th, 2018, 10 a.m. to 5:30 p.m., over 50 dBA. Anyone from the public have any commentary on this item? Anyone from council? Seeing and hearing no one, that item will move on. Section 3, motion approving beer and liquor license applications. The first section is new licenses. Front Street Brewery, Oktoberfest, 421 West River Drive, parking lot event, outdoor area, September 28th through 29th, 2018, Oktoberfest, license type B for beer. JC's of the Quad Cities, 400 West Beiderbecke Drive, LeClaire Park, outdoor area, September 15th, 2018, Brouhaha, license type B for beer. Hilltop Campus Village Incorporated, Harrison Street between 14th and 15th Streets, outdoor area, September 15th, 2018, Retrofest, license type beer and wine. Viva Quad Cities Fiesta, 400 West Beiderbecke Drive, LeClaire Park, outdoor area, September 7th through 9th, 2018, license type C for liquor. And I have an addition, but for any of those that I just read, any commentary from the public? Anyone from council? Seeing and hearing no one, those items will move on. And we do have an addition to Ward 3, a last-minute add-on that I'll read real quick, get commentary, and then entertain a motion, a second, and a voice vote. And that item is German American Heritage Center, 712 West 2nd Street, parking lot only, outdoor area, August 25th, 2018, Best of the Wurst event. License, ich kann Deutsch sprechen. License type B for beer. Anyone from the public have any comments on that item? Council? Any?
Move to add.
Yeah, I would entertain a motion to add this to the agenda.
So
Sorry. There's been a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Same sign. Now is there any commentary? Getting ahead of myself. Seeing no one, that item will be added for next week for consent agenda. Moving on, Flavors, 1720 East Kimberly Road. New license, license type C, liquor. Our Lady of Victory Church of Davenport, Iowa. 1627 West 42nd Street, outdoor area, September 15th, 2018, Parish Fall Festival. License type B for beer. Any comments from the public on either of those remaining items? Anyone from council? Seeing and hearing no one, those items will move on. The rest of the list, annual license renewals, are listed in your packet. I will not be reading those, so that takes us an entire page over. And I would ask Alderman Condon to go ahead and set the agenda.
I move to put all items on the consent agenda.
Alderman Ross.
Sorry.
I believe there's item C, a request for an
Did
exemption.
I miss?
19 and 20-year-old.
That's right, I did. Sorry, backing up. The request for exemption for 19 and 20-year-olds on premise. One item here, the Call Ballroom, 1012 West 4th Street, license type C for liquor. Anyone from the public have any comment on that one item? Anyone from council? Seeing and hearing no one, that item will move on. And now I will ask Alderman Condon to set an agenda.
My apologies as well. I move to put all items on the consent agenda, including the addition of the German American Heritage Center's event.
There's been a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, same sign. And we're done with this section, Your Honor.
Thank you, Alderman Rosson and Alderman Condon. Our third area to be discussed is Public Works, and Alderman Ambrose will lead that discussion, and Alderman Dunn will set the agenda.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'll open the discussion, and I'll read through all these items and ask for public if they have any concerns about any one of these issues. The first one is a resolution approving the acceptance of for the construction of the FY 2018 sidewalk program completed by Kelly Construction of Davenport, Iowa. Number two is a resolution approving the proposed plans, specifications, form of contract, and estimated cost for the Starlight Spur track expansion and interchange track construction project. Number three is a resolution approving the contract for the construction of Jersey Ridge Road at Cromwell Circle and 65th Street Center Turn Lane. Project the project to the lowest responsive bidder. Number four is a resolution to approve the Caterpillar engine #1 overhaul of the water pollution control plant to Alterford Incorporated in the amount of $105,000. Number five is a resolution approving the contract for the restroom building renovation at LeClaire Park to Swanson Construction Company of Bettendorf, Iowa in the amount of $136,651. Number six is a resolution assessing the cost of boarding up buildings at various lots and tracts of real estate. Number seven is a resolution assessing the cost of brush and debris removal at various lots and tracts of real estate. Number eight is a resolution assessing the cost of condemned property demolition at various lots and tracts of real estate. Number nine is a resolution assessing the cost of sidewalk replacement at various lots and tracts of real estate. And the last item is a resolution assessing the cost of weed cutting at various lots and tracts of real estate. Anybody from the public wishing to address any one of these items, please come forward. Council? Alderman Dunn, please set the agenda.
I move to place all items on consent, please.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Alderman Ambrose and Alderman Dunn. Our last area is to be discussed finance and administration. Alderman Tompkins in her absence, Alderman McGinnis as vice chair will lead that discussion, and Alderman Dunn will set the agenda.
Thank you, Your Honor. The first item tonight is resolution accepting the annual Burn Justice Assistance Grant from the federal government for 2018-2019 in the amount of $85,774. Is there anybody from the public who has comment? Anybody from council? The second is a resolution awarding a contract for emergency repairs to the fueling station at Davenport Municipal Airport to Octera Group in the amount of $153,495. Is anybody from the public with comment? Council? Number three, a motion awarding a 2-year contract with an option of a 1-year extension for traffic signal maintenance to Davenport Electric Contract Company of Davenport, Iowa. Anyone from the public who'd like to comment? Council? Number four is a motion awarding a contract for medical bill review and pharmacy benefit management for the Risk Management Division to Corvell Corporation of West Des Moines, Iowa. Anybody from the public with comment? Anybody from council? Number five, Motion awarding a contract to demolish 3 properties, 726 West 6th Street, 220 Warren Street, 2410 Davie Street, to McAdam Incorporated of Davenport, Iowa, in the total amount of $56,184. Anybody from the public who would like to comment? Anybody from council? Alderman Dunn, would you set the agenda?
Thank you. I move to place all items to the consent agenda, please.
Thank you very much. Yes. Yeah, all in favor.
All in favor? Aye. Okay. And the next is purchases of $10,000 to $50,000.
Is there anyone
Sorry?
opposed?
Anyone opposed?
Sorry, opposed? Okay. All in favor? Aye. Okay. All right. Motion, and then purchases of $10,000 to $50,000 is for information only, and those are here in your agenda as well. And turning that back to you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Alderman McGinnis and Alderman Dunn. Do we have any other ordinance resolutions and motions this evening? Seeing none. Now we're going to ask if there's any public with business tonight. Again, this is a session where we listen. We take all your information, and we don't discuss or answer any questions, but we listen to all of you and hear what ires you may have. So is there anyone from the public that would like to speak this evening? Again, please, your name and address or ward, please.
Andrew Kiefert, 4th Ward. Just making my presence known, as well as others, as we stood outside tonight in protest of your continued wanting conversations for this ordinance to change the independence of the Civil Rights Commission. So we're hoping that maybe somebody will come to their senses, ask for a suspension of the rules, and make a motion to vote, and you guys vote this down and kill it now. It's not doing any good for the community. It's causing a lot of tension. People are taking notice, and these conversations are forced. As Mr. Clearwell said something about horse and buggy. This is like putting the buggy in front of the horse, then sending the horse home and asking us to push this along. It's kind of ridiculous. So I'm asking once again that somebody kill this, kill it now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else want to speak to the public with business this evening?
We're tag teaming, yeah. My name's Dennis Platt. I'm in the 6th Ward, and I would echo everything that gentleman just said. I would encourage you to go ahead and make a motion to kill this ordinance that you've proposed. It clearly is illegal. It's a misstep. It's misguided. It's a mistake. It's okay. You're adults. We can all admit a mistake and move on. But trying to make a mistake look like something else is disturbing for a lot of people. And I think we need to move on from this and do some constructive things. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
My name is Genevieve Rafferty, and I live in the 5th Ward. I just want to inform my neighbors about a few things. The public should know that the city has posted all positions at the Civil Rights Commission. I'd also like to pull the sheet off Corey Spiegel's hiring of a friend as a human resource director. Spiegel's friend is uncertified and unqualified. It has also come to my attention that Spiegel and other city employees receive tens of thousands of dollars in tax rebates every year with funds which are supposed to go to citizens to buy homes. And there sits among you a council person who is promoting their own private business through the city email. As to the mayor's youth summit on juvenile crime, again, open United Neighbors so the children of all ages in the inner city have a place to go, preschool, after school, summer, and a program for young parents to support and educate. Don't let the children pay for the sins of the director who spent 40 years padding her own pocket and those of her friends and family. I have, as they say now, all the receipts. You focus on the crime in City Hall first before you challenge yourself with the problem of juvenile crime, because as an educator, I never believed in do as I say, not what I do.
Thank you. Anyone else have comments this evening?
Hello, I'm Evan Shank. I live in the 8th Ward, and I also wanted to discuss the Civil Rights Commission. So I was here for the August 8th meeting of the City Council, and I remember that several aldermen acknowledged at that time that the City Council had done a poor job communicating with the community and citizens of Davenport about the proposed changes. And in part, the reason for the majority voting to table the ordinance for a cycle was so that you could take the time to communicate more effectively and address that error with the community. I saw that yesterday the local media reported that the intention is to meet with a small group to include some aldermen, some civil rights commissioners, and some community leaders. The articles that I read didn't name any of the individuals who would be at that meeting or any of the organizations that they would represent specifically. But as I understand it, these meetings would not be observed or commented on by the public in the way that the city council meetings here would be. So I'm deeply concerned that in the guise of consulting with the community in a way that should have been done at the very beginning of the process but wasn't, the city council is trying to reduce the level of public involvement that we've seen at the city council meetings on August 1st and August 8th in reaction to the overwhelmingly negative reception of the idea by the community. So although I agree with the councilors that the city council did mishandle communicating with the citizens of Davenport on the issue of the Civil Rights Commission, I think that the solution to that is not less consultation in a public forum, but more. I also wanted to say that I continue to be disturbed at the omission of any positive reason given for the changes proposed to the Civil Rights Commission. The mayor yesterday to WQAD said that the changes that have been proposed in the ordinance to the Civil Rights Commission are only part of an ongoing process of reforms to every department and every commission that is part of the city government. And I understand that if you're going through a process of reforming the entire city government, that eventually you'll get to the Civil Rights Commission. However, that only explains the issue in general. And there's no explanation been offered for any of the specific changes that are elements of that ordinance, such as placing aldermen in administrative control over the commission and its staff, such as replacing the staff of the commission with outside contractors, such as exempting the school district from investigation and oversight by the Civil Rights Commission. And those are all very specific elements of the ordinance, so there must be specific reasons, more than just general reasons, that those elements were adapted. And I don't believe that the public has heard any justification for those elements of the ordinance. And there must be reasons, they haven't been discussed, and I feel that if those reasons are not fit to be heard in a public forum of this kind, then they aren't fit as the basis for a radical change in public policy. That's right. And thank you for your time and listening to me.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Is there anyone else that have comments this evening?
Ed McWilliams, 5th Ward. I just wanted to let you guys know that my Special Olympics team is partnering with the new hockey team, and we'll be, or I'll be selling tickets for the opening night. More details to come as it gets closer. So I just wanted to get the word out there ahead of time to help raise money for Scott County Special Olympics. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. Anyone else? Seeing no one else, are there any other reports of city officials? Seeing none, is there a motion to adjourn? Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed, same sign. Thank you. Meeting adjourned.